Chapter 61. Viper sat on the spectator stand, aghast. This brat. I wonder what Umbra said to him. This time, he really didn't hold back. He scrutinized the large white words on the trial stone, double-checking for any errors. Finding none, he chuckled to himself. As the chief instructor of Team Rocket, responsible for overseeing Purgatory Island, he knew better than anyone the extent of Cain's accomplishments. Without a doubt, Cain's results were some of the best among all previous trial participants. Cough! Viper cleared his throat, snapping the examiner out of his trance. The examiner on stage jolted at the sound and exclaimed, "Co number 234, attack value 458. Gasps echoed throughout the square, followed by a series of curses. Fuck. Holy shit. You got to be fucking kidding me. Goddamn. Cain had secured his spot as the top-performing trialist, leaving everyone else in the dust. Down below the trial platform, Jasmine's mouth hung open in shock. Her face stiffened as she gazed at Cain and Murkrow on stage. After a long pause, she whispered, "Is this his true strength? The variable that teacher spoke of?" Xander opened his mouth, ready to speak, but only managed to mutter, "He surpassed me last time, and now he's even further ahead of me. What kind of monster is he?" Alan, standing in the crowd, spoke with a facade of calm. In a week's time, his attack value increased from 200 to 400. This trial is getting more and more interesting. Despite his words, his hand trembled as he petted his Miltank, revealing the true state of his nerves. Sky, Cain's top subordinate, gazed at the result on the trial stone in disbelief. This is Cain's true strength? Soros didn't die in vain. He had thought that if Cain managed to become number one, it would only be by a slim margin, surpassing Xander by a little. But he never expected Cain's true strength to be so overwhelmingly exaggerated. Some in the crowd looked surprised as they gazed at Cain, but their thoughts remained unknown. After the examiner recorded the result, Cain descended from the platform with Murkrow, returning to his original position. As a leader, Cain was already surrounded by people, and with the release of the results, the crowd around him only grew thicker. They felt lucky to follow such a powerful trial taker. At the very least, they would have an easier time on the trial island. Even if they joined Team Rocket in the future, they believed that as long as they followed in Cain's footsteps, their status would rise. Sky raised some eyebrows when he unleashed the full potential of the coughing he had tamed, once belonging to Soros. To everyone's surprise, it achieved an attack value of 288, showing that Sky's talent as a trainer was not to be underestimated. Coughings were not known for their straightforward attacks, making Sky's success all the more impressive. As the test came to a close, the rankings were revealed. Cain dominated with a staggering attack value of 458, securing his position at the top once again. The rest of the rankings were as follows. Second place, Xander and his Econs, attack value 337. Third place, Alan and his Miltank, attack value 330. Fourth place, Jasmine and her Zubat, attack value 308. Fifth place, Sky and his coughing, attack value 288. Despite a few shakeups, Sky taking Soros's place as the fifth-ranked trainer and Alan's recently evolved Miltank getting third, the rankings remained mostly unchanged. However, after Umbra pointed out the peculiarities of this trial, Cain noticed a few individuals who seemed to be hiding something. Though their results weren't particularly high, ranking around the top 10, there was an aura of mystery surrounding them. Their hidden strength, or something else entirely, left him wondering. Team Rocket's examiner stepped onto the platform and cleared his throat, drawing the attention of everyone present. "The basic test has been completed," he announced, his voice carrying across the crowd. "If anyone is unhappy with their results, they can challenge someone within 10 ranks of them. But be warned, you only get one shot. If you succeed, you will be promoted to the loser's rank. If you fail, you'll drop 10 ranks. And remember, this challenge is a matter of life or death." The examiner's piercing gaze swept over the gathered trainers, emphasizing the gravity of the situation. The attack value test was just the beginning, a simple measure of the power of each Pokémon. But the trial challenge was a true test of a trainer's control in battle and their ability to command their Pokémon. It also showed the results of the Pokémon's training, as strength wasn't solely based on the trainer's command. At the examiner's announcement, the crowd below the platform stirred but quickly settled. Some trialists exchanged nervous glances, unsure of whether to take the risk. Though some were dissatisfied with their result and felt that their Pokémon did not excel in straightforward attacks, the life or death stakes made them hesitant to step forward and challenge. The prospect of death doused the flickering hope they previously held. The silence in the square was palpable as the weight of the life-and-death challenge weighed heavy on the trial participants. Fear and uncertainty were palpable in the air. Cain stood to the side, his gaze lazily scanning the group. But when his eyes landed on Xander, a small smile appeared on his face. Xander was also staring at Cain, weighing his options. He had already made up his mind, but the pressure of Cain's impressive result made him hesitate. That is, until Cain's gaze met his. Xander straightened his back, clenching his fists tightly, and announced to the examiner, "Ha! What a bunch of cowards. I'll go first, I challenge, first place Cain." Xander strode confidently towards the battle area. The onlookers held their breath as they watched the fearless young man approach. Xander's reputation as a skilled fighter had preceded him, and his determination was written all over his face. The Team Rocket examiner shot a worried glance at Viper, who was observing from the viewing platform. Viper's expression was somber. He understood why Xander was making this challenge. Despite all the advantages he had fallen behind Cain, and Xander could not tolerate being overshadowed by him. With a nod of his head, Viper signaled to the examiner that the challenge could proceed. The examiner sighed deeply, wishing that he didn't have to be involved in such a dangerous match. Despite his own strength and position within Team Rocket, he still feared the wrath of Xander's brother. But as an examiner, he had no choice but to carry out the challenge. Xander bellowed with laughter, challenging Cain. "What are you waiting for? Show me your true strength." Cain stretched his neck, a sly grin spreading across his face. Xander's challenge was exactly what Cain had wanted and expected. Cain knew that if all went according to plan, he would have to temporarily leave the island. And as the leader of a newly acquired faction, he needed to establish his authority. Cain, number 234. "Do you accept the challenge from Xander, number 99? The Team Rocket examiner asked, standing at the referee's position. Accepting the challenge meant that the battle would go on. However, if Cain chose to back down, it would be considered a loss, and Xander would take his place, dropping Cain 10 spots in the rankings. Cain's Murkrow, who had long been itching to battle Xander's Ekans, eagerly looked on as his trainer accepted the challenge. The examiner sighed as the two contestants he least wanted to see faced off against each other. He was aware of Xander's identity and had heard from Viper about Cain's association with Umbra. Xander's brother was now seen as a joke compared to Cain, who had caught Umbra's attention. In this challenge, each competitor is limited to one Pokémon, and there are no other rules. The battle will end when one side surrenders or dies. Begin the challenge. With the examiner's declaration, the tension in the plaza reached a boiling point as the first battle of the trial officially began. Ekans, use glare. Xander started the battle by calling out the attack. Kaba. Ekans hissed and bared its fangs, whilst it flaunted the pattern on its belly, a move meant to scare and paralyze the opponent. Combined with its characteristic intimidate ability, the effectiveness of the move would be maximized. Cain was quick to respond. Murkrow, take to the air and use Tailwind. Don't look at it. Murkrow obeyed, spreading his wings and rising into the air, surrounded by a white aura that reduced wind resistance. The bird transformed into a black blur and vanished from sight. Xander wasn't about to be outdone. Screech, Ekans. Let's follow suit. Murkrow, Screech. The two Pokémon became sources of sound, each sending out invisible sound waves that rippled across the plaza, making everyone and every Pokémon feel uneasy. However, Ekans was limited by its inability to fly, putting it at a disadvantage against Murkrow soaring in the sky. Despite the ear-piercing sound-lowering defense, the initiative in the battle remained with Cain. Cain, you won't just keep your Pokémon in the air forever, will you? If you do, I'll really have no respect for you. Xander called out, frustration showing in his voice. Idiot. That's a boorish provocation, but thanks for the encouragement. Cain sneered in response. Murkrow, get close and use wing attack. Xander cackled wickedly as he watched the two creatures about to clash. Despite Cain's scolding, he was satisfied as long as Ekans and Murkrow fought. Ekans, don't dodge, Xander ordered. Use bind and then bite. Ekans's most formidable weapons were its two sharp fangs and its muscular coils. These two moves would bring out Ekans's full potential. Murkrow swooped down like a black lightning bolt, his wings glowing with white light. Without pause, he crashed into Ekans. The collision was like a clash between asteroids, sending up a cloud of dust. Ekans let out a cry of pain, caught off guard by Murkrow's powerful attack. Because of its subconscious defensive reflex, it didn't have time to immediately counterattack. Murkrow, under Cain's influence, retreated after his strike. Ekans's bind and bite missed their mark. Xander's face paled in shock. Quick, use acid. Reacting quickly, Ekans shot a ball of purple liquid from its mouth, which hit Murkrow as he retreated. Acid took effect instantly, dissolving a few of Murkrow's feathers and slightly reducing his special defense. The two creatures separated, their eyes filled with intense battle intent. A single exchange of blows had given them a rough gauge of each other's strength. They were both warriors through and through. Xander's jaw tensed as he glared at the nonchalant Cain across the battleground. Fury boiled within him, his frustration all too palpable. Murkrow, with his nimble movements, had the upper hand against Ekans. And with Murkrow's high attack power, Ekans would struggle just to hold on. Ekans gasped for air, Murkrow's strike having taken its toll. Murkrow hovered in the air, his battle intent evident in his piercing gaze. A mere scratch from Ekans's acid was just a minor inconvenience for Murkrow, who was well accustomed to fighting in the wild. The disparity in strength between the two Pokémon was undeniable. Xander, give it up. You can't beat me, Cain said coolly, his words a sharp contrast to the desperation on Xander's face. To be honest, even if Cain were able to defeat Xander, he wouldn't outright kill his Ekans. This was because Xander's older brother held the position of a senior officer in Team Rocket, which made Cain somewhat wary. But as the battle raged on and intensified, Cain couldn't be sure he could maintain his easygoing state. This was a fight for survival, after all, and Cain wouldn't hold back. If he killed Ekans, he would become Xander's enemy, and even if Xander's older brother was a senior officer, Cain wouldn't hesitate to eliminate the threat. With a lifetime of experience and the aid of the AI system, Cain was confident he could surpass even this officer he had never met, putting an end to this animosity once and for all. Cain's words may have appeared lenient to onlookers, but to Xander, it was a direct affront to his pride. They ignited a fire within Xander's heart, stoking his determination to win. With a determined look on his face, Xander reached for his Team Rocket belt and a dark, purplish pill materialized in his hand. Cain's eyes narrowed as he watched Xander's movements, a sense of unease creeping over him. Xander's eyes were dark and menacing as he fixed his gaze on Cain. He ground his teeth together so loudly that the sound echoed across the plaza, making his expression all the more sinister. You leave me no choice. Prepare to die, you bastard. With those words, Xander hurled the pill at Ekans, who swiftly swallowed it whole. Viper, who was observing from the stands, furrowed his brow upon seeing what Xander had thrown. Yet, he remained silent. Being the respected figure that he was, Viper knew exactly what the pill was. It was listed on Team Rocket's exchange list, with a price tag of 5,000 points. The description stated that it had the power to drastically increase the poison energy of a poison-type Pokémon, multiplying it by 5 times. However, such a potent effect came with severe side effects, leaving the Pokémon weakened for an entire week. Xander's intentions were clear. He wanted to eliminate Cain once and for all, ensuring that he would no longer be challenged in the trial. Even if Ekans was weakened for a week, Xander was confident that he could catch up later. This pill was given to him by his brother as a last resort in case of an emergency, but he never thought he'd use it against Cain. Gaba. The moment Ekans swallowed the purple pill, he felt an overwhelming energy surge through his body, causing him to bulge slightly. A light purple mist escaped from him and enveloped his body. The mist hissed and crackled as it made contact with the ground, causing it to become pitted. All of this happened in the blink of an eye, catching Cain off guard. Xander sneered, his eyes shining with malevolence. Ekans, poison sting, he commanded. Ekans unleashed a barrage of long purple needles, each one coated in a potent poison. They flew towards Murkrow at breakneck speed. Murkrow, Gust, fan these poison needles away, Cain ordered, recognizing the danger in the situation. Murkrow summoned a small whirlwind from the energy in his wings and aimed it at the incoming needles. But to Cain's surprise, the poison-coated needles easily passed through the whirlwind, their purple color only slightly diminished. They continued their trajectory towards Murkrow, striking his body with deadly accuracy. A purple mist enveloped Murkrow, indicating he had been poisoned. Cain frowned, stunned by Xander's unexpected ace in the hole. Such strong poison energy, he muttered. Ha ha ha. Xander laughed arrogantly. Who told you to ignore me like this? Now that Murkrow is poisoned, you have no choice but to end this quickly. Cain realized the direness of the situation. Murkrow, continue using wing attack. Caw. Even though Murkrow was feeling uncomfortable, he obeyed Cain's command and transformed into a black light, flying towards Ekans. His powerful wing attack was his strongest move, perfect for ending the fight quickly. But Xander was one step ahead. Ekans, scary face. Then use Poison Fang. Xander didn't hide the killing intent in his heart as he commanded Ekans to use his strongest poison-type move. As Murkrow closed in, the speed-reducing effect of Scary Face slowed him down, and Ekans's fangs were poised to bite into the bird's wings. Gaba! Caw! The two creatures once again clashed and separated, but this time the outcome was different. Murkrow was hit by Ekans' poison fang. When the snake struck back, the purple hue on the bird's body grew more intense. The tide of the battle was turning in Xander's favor, and Cain and Murkrow were struggling to keep up. Ha ha ha! I'll kill you today. Xander laughed with newfound confidence as the poison took effect. He believed that as long as he could defeat Cain here, even if he was weakened for a week, nobody would dare challenge him. But what Xander didn't expect was that at that moment, Cain suddenly started laughing too. Chapter 62. Xander gaped in disbelief as he saw the grin on Cain's face. What's there to laugh about? He thought, feeling a twinge of unease. The other trainers on the field shared his sentiment, their eyes narrowing suspiciously as they wondered what trick Cain had up his sleeve. Just then, Cain reached for his Team Rocket belt and pulled out a small remote control and a pale yellow pill. Everyone's eyes zeroed in on the remote control, but then fell to the pill in his hand. It was just an ordinary antidote, worth a measly 10 points on the Team Rocket exchange list. Ha ha ha! Xander laughed, feeling triumphant. Cain, are you kidding? With that trash antidote, you think you can cure Ekans's poison? I thought you had something up your sleeve, but it turns out it's just a plain old antidote. But Cain only laughed even harder, his eyes twinkling with mischief. Ready to party, Murkrow? He asked, ignoring Xander's taunts. Murkrow let out an excited cry at the sight of the remote control. Ever since their last battle, Cain had kept a weight on Murkrow's body. But now, he was taking it off, and Murkrow was more confident than ever. Sky's frown deepened as he pondered the unfavorable situation Cain was in. If Cain were to fall, Sky feared his own future days wouldn't be easy. He just couldn't figure out why Cain was acting so confident. Wait a minute, check out that remote control in his hand. Sky exclaimed, his eyes finally zeroing in on the key to the mystery. That's the Team Rocket's custom weight remote control. I've seen it on their exchange list. Everyone's eyes shot over to the remote control, and shock and disbelief was written all over their faces. Murkrow, who was already so fast and fierce, was carrying a weight the whole time? Cain's slender fingers pressed the button on the remote control, and he threw the antidote to Murkrow with his other hand. Murkrow let out a joyful cry as he felt his body lighten, and he eagerly swallowed the antidote. Although the antidote had taken the edge off the poison, it still flowed through Murkrow's veins like a deadly river. This was no cure, only a temporary reprieve. Do you really think you can beat me? Xander sneered, ordering Ekans to attack. Dream on. Ekans, use Poison Sting again. Show him the full extent of your poison. Murkrow, dodge those poison needles and give that Ekans a taste of your wing attack, shouted Cain, a sly smile playing on his lips. Murkrow swooped and swerved, dodging the poison needle, flying his way with grace. With newfound speed, he barreled towards Ekans like a bullet. Xander sneered, you think a little speed will save you? Ekans, show 'em what you're made of. Use Scary Face and Poison Fang. Ha! Cain smirked, the corners of his mouth upturning. Did he really think weight training was just for show? With a crash, Murkrow slammed into Ekans, whilst under the effect of Scary Face. And although the purple pill had dulled Ekans' sense of pain and its venomous fangs were at the ready, Ekans was no match for the lightning-fast Murkrow. With a quick flutter of his wings, the bird easily dodged Ekans' strike. Don't let up, Murkrow. Keep those wing attacks coming, yelled Cain. Ekans, you can do this. Use Scary Face and Poison Fang again, show them what you're made of. Xander yelled through gritted teeth, the tension in his voice palpable. He was struggling to deal with the lightning-fast Murkrow, who seemed to be getting faster by the second. As fate would have it, Scary Face worked its magic and Murkrow's speed decreased once again. But before he could even breathe a sigh of relief, Cain's frosty voice echoed like a piercing sword. Murkrow, protect. With a green glow, a protective shield appeared around Murkrow, blocking Ekans' poison fang. What the? Xander gasped in shock. Cain's eyes were glinting with pride as he watched Murkrow unleash a powerful wing attack on Ekans, sending it flying across the battleground and knocking it out of commission. Everyone was stunned into silence, not a soul in the plaza daring to make a sound. They had just witnessed a dramatic turnaround. Murkrow, kill it! Cain growled, his voice as cold as a winter storm in the underworld. The spectators held their breaths as they watched Murkrow hurtling towards Ekans, his wings spreading wide, ready to strike. But then a voice shouted out, "Wait, no!" It was Xander, dashing across the battlefield, desperation written all over his face. From Cain's perspective, the moment Xander called for his death, their feud had reached an irreparable state. "You want me gone? Well, be prepared to taste your own medicine," Cain coldly thought to himself. "Hold it right there," cried the Team Rocket examiner, trying to intervene. But Cain remained steadfast in his mission. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, the most unexpected voice spoke up. "Stop it, Cain. He can't die now." It was Instructor Viper, the Trial Island's most respected figure. However, the helplessness in his voice could not be concealed. Cain, who had been giving the order, frowned as he reluctantly commanded Murkrow to cease his attack. "All right, stop Murkrow." He could ignore everyone else here, but not Viper. Nevertheless, life wasn't the only thing at stake. Xander would have to face the consequences of his actions, and pay the price for trying to kill Cain. "Remove an eye instead." Xander gasped as he watched in horror as the bird swooped down on Ekans with lightning speed. Before anyone could react, Murkrow had struck, ferociously pecking at Ekans's eye and flying off with a bloody eyeball in his beak. "Ah! Ekans!" Xander yelled, dodging as the bird swooped past him. Murkrow didn't hesitate, gobbling down Ekans's eye in one swift motion. The onlookers stood in stunned silence, unable to say a word as they watched the bird feast. Viper also stayed quiet, secretly acquiescing to Cain's actions. After all, he was the one who set the rules for the deathmatch, but now he was breaking them. Regardless, Cain wasn't satisfied. He turned his piercing gaze on Viper, a hint of question and seriousness in his eyes. He didn't believe that it was all because of Xander's brother. After all, his rank and standing were nowhere near the upper echelons of the organization like Viper. Viper sighed as he felt Cain's eyes on him, knowing he couldn't avoid the situation. He was the chief instructor of Team Rocket, and he only gave Cain an explanation because of his close friendship with Umbra. Otherwise, anyone who dared to look at him like that would have faced a much different outcome. "He's still useful," Viper said finally, his tone leaving no room for argument. Cain knew when to call it quits. Even if Viper didn't give him a straight answer, there was nothing he could do about it. He had to suck it up and keep quiet. But deep down, Cain got the message. This trial was different. Murkrow returned to Cain's side, flapping his wings in anger. He had been stopped just as he was about to unleash a killer blow. He managed to take out his frustration by pecking Ekans's eye, which was a small victory, satisfying the hatred in his heart. Cain soothed Murkrow, petting his feathers to calm him down. He pulled out a few antidotes from his belt and fed them to the bird one by one. The purple pill had increased the strength of Ekans's poison, and it took the 5th antidote for Murkrow to finally expel all the toxins. He watched as Xander stumbled over to Ekans's side, pulling out every medicine bottle he had from his belt and pouring them into Ekans's mouth like they were going out of style. Meanwhile, he sprayed some healing spray onto Ekans's eye to stop the bleeding. The disinfectant stung and caused the unconscious Ekans to convulse in agony. If it was just any ordinary Pokémon, they would have bounced back with a little TLC. But not the current Ekans. This was a whole different ballgame. After downing the purple pill, the body's senses and self-protective mechanisms were dulled. It was the body's way of saying, "I need a timeout." The pill had some nasty side effects, and if Ekans couldn't bounce back soon, its level would drop and its aptitude might even decrease. It would never be able to catch up to Murkrow. And to add insult to injury, Murkrow had clawed out one of Ekans's eyes, knocking down its battle power by 20%. Be that as it may, they had a beef that could never be settled. He was just doing his due diligence, getting rid of the trash. The gap between Cain and Xander would only get bigger and bigger. Xander was feeding Ekans large amounts of medicine like he was trying to revive it, even though it was down for the count. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Cain and Murkrow exited the battlefield in style. The examiner declared the challenge over and announced, "Challenger failed. Ranking drops 10 spots." Xander trudged out of the battlefield, dejected, as he made his way down the path towards the dorms with Ekans safely returned to its Pokeball. Despite his defeat, he was filled with questions about what had gone so wrong. Just moments ago, he had been on the brink of victory, his Ekans battling with everything it had. And then, in a flash, it was all over. If it weren't for Viper, I might be 6 feet under by now, Xander thought to himself, still in shock. Meanwhile, Sky watched in awe as Cain strolled towards him, the triumphant Murkrow perched on his shoulder. Sky had never been one to give up easily, but he was starting to realize that Cain was not someone to be trifled with. The man was a force to be reckoned with, and his strength only seemed to grow with each passing day. Who would have thought that Cain's Murkrow was only scratching the surface of its true power? Sky thought, his mind racing. And he's got a slowpoke that's just as fierce. No way am I crossing that guy. With a deep sigh, Sky adjusted his mindset, accepting that from this moment on, he was a loyal follower of Cain. I'll do my best to support him, no matter what comes our way, Sky thought resolutely. And with that, the last remnants of any thoughts of rebellion vanished, and Sky was fully and completely under Cain's command. Sky approached Cain, his demeanor changed. Cain, do you need any healing potions? We've still got a few left in our stock. Cain raised an eyebrow in surprise. He could see the transformation in Sky, like he had finally figured something out. Cain shook his head. Nah, there's no need. Murkrow's doing just fine after I got rid of the poison. No need to waste those potions on him. The group of 20 or so followers behind Cain were beaming with excitement. With a boss as powerful as Cain, they felt lucky to be on his side. After the battle between Cain and Xander ended, more and more challengers appeared on the battlefield. But the shock from the previous battle had left them looking small in comparison. Despite the life and death stakes, there were only a few casualties. Most of the participants had already worked out their differences, and those who realized they couldn't win chose to surrender, knowing that falling 10 places was better than risking an uncontrollable situation. Besides, only the top 10 would earn rewards. The rest of the rankings, well, let's just say they don't mean squat. Though the fight for last place had the onlookers' blood running cold. These were the saddest and most tragic battles of the trial. Everyone knew that last place meant elimination, and elimination meant death. So they figured, why not go out in a blaze of glory and fight to the death? And that's exactly what they did. The battle for last place became a wild and crazy brawl, with more and more casualties as the day wore on. By the time the curtains closed on the test, the crowd was in a state of shock. 5 trainers lost their lives, and 3 more saw their beloved Pokémon succumb to their injuries. Thanks to Viper and his new rule, this trial became a bloody mess. And with the next test looming, it was only a matter of time before more lives would be lost. Cain stood at the bow of the massive cargo ship, staring out at the endless sea. White smoke billowed from the tall chimney, making it look like a lonely beacon in a vast desert. Beside him, the black bird-shaped Pokémon known as Murkrow kept a watchful eye on the horizon. Cain was decked out in all black, the sea breeze blowing through his hair. The salty air was invigorating, a welcome change from the monotony of the trial island. It was Team Rocket's cargo ship, delivering supplies to the trial island every month, and Umbra had allowed Cain to come along for the ride after his latest test had impressed him. For the first time in his life, Cain was able to see the route back from the trial island. Looks like we're at the border of the Kanto and Johto regions, Cain remarked to Murkrow. How's it feel, kid? Came a gruff voice from behind. Umbra emerged from the cabin, walking over to lean against the railing beside Cain. You've only been gone for a month, but it must feel like you've been in the wilderness for a lifetime. Mr. Umbra, Cain called out, his voice respectful. Umbra chuckled. Come on now, Cain, let's leave the formalities behind. Just call me Umbra. Despite his high position in Team Rocket, Umbra wasn't one to put on airs. He believed that strength was the most important thing in this world, and those who had it had the privilege of being respected. Although Cain didn't have much strength yet, Umbra saw potential in him. And for that reason, among others, he treated Cain with a bit more ease. To be honest, I don't feel much of anything, Cain replied, his voice tinged with a hint of sadness. I've been an orphan my whole life. There's not much difference between surviving in society and surviving on the trial island. It's a dog-eat-dog world. Everything I do is just to survive. Umbra was taken aback by Cain's answer, but then he smiled warmly. It seems like we have similar experiences. His eyes drifted off, as if lost in thought, reliving memories from the past. The two of them fell into silence, the only sounds the whistling of the sea breeze and the crashing of the waves against the cargo ship. After a while, Umbra broke the silence with a self-deprecating smile. All these experiences just make me think about the past. Umbra was notorious as a highly enigmatic and ruthless member of Team Rocket, but after spending time with him, Cain came to see that he was more like a friendly uncle than a cold-blooded killer. Here you go, kid. I had someone whip up this Pokémon Association ID card just for you. All your info is in there, and we made sure it won't raise any red flags. As long as the Elite Four or anyone of similar status within the association don't take a real close look, you're golden. Umbra grinned as he handed Cain the card, complete with a stranger's face and the association seal. Cain was taken aback. Umbra had gone out of his way to get him an official identity card. It meant that Cain could finally step out of the shadows and live a life in the sun. And there's also this special human skin mask, made by the experts at Team Rocket. It's so realistic that nobody'll be able to tell it's fake, as long as you don't scratch or burn it, Umbra explained, tossing Cain a mask as delicate as a cicada's wing. It's the perfect disguise to match that shiny new ID card of yours. With these tools, Cain believed he could become unrecognizable, even to those who knew him well. Of course, as long as his Pokémon's true identity remained a secret. Cain eagerly accepted the identity card and mask from Umbra, already envisioning the dual lives he could lead. His Murkrow would represent his place in Team Rocket, while his Slowpoke would symbolize his role within the Pokémon Association. If I play my cards right, he thought, I might just be able to rise up the ranks in both organizations. Who knows? I might even become the next Koga, ruling from the shadows. And with the resources from both groups at his disposal, Cain's power would grow exponentially. Was that what Umbra had intended all along? Umbra seemed to sense his ambitions and added, in half an hour, we'll arrive in Vermilion City. When we dock, you'll be able to disembark with your Pokémon. He then gave Cain a new task. Take this medal I'm giving you and head to the Lake of Rage Team Rocket Base in Mahogany Town, in the Johto region. I need you to retrieve something for me. Someone will contact you when you get there. And with that, Umbra disappeared back into the cabin, leaving Cain to ponder his next move. He looked down at the identity card and mask in his hand and smiled to himself. Vermilion City, huh? He thought. No wonder the association has never been able to find Team Rocket's Purgatory Island. Vermilion City is home to Lieutenant Surge, one of the 3 senior executives of Team Rocket. He must be helping to keep the island hidden. Cain rubbed his chin, remembering the information about the 3 senior executives of Team Rocket. So let me get this straight. There's Lieutenant Surge in Vermilion City, Sabrina in Saffron City, and Koga, the poisonous ninja master in Fuchsia City. These guys are the biggest nails Giovanni has driven into the Pokémon Association. Among them, Koga was the most formidable. When the Indigo League of the Kanto region was divided into the Kanto and Johto regions, Koga claimed the title of Elite Four in the Johto region and was considered one of Giovanni's most loyal supporters. But Cain also knew that the other 2 were not to be trifled with. Sabrina's title, Master of Psychic Pokémon, spoke for itself, and Lieutenant Surge, also known as Lightning Lieutenant, commanded an army like a seasoned general. Cain chuckled to himself, so the 3 senior executives have their own strengths, like the 3 Stooges but with higher stakes and fewer pies in the face. Cain's Pokémon, end of Volume 1. Pokémon. Murkrow. Green. Gender. Male. Level, 20. Type. Dark plus Flying. Ability. Prankster. Held items. None. Egg moves. Punishment. Feint attack. Roost. Basic moves. Peck. Astonish. Pursuit. Haze. Wing attack. Taunt moves. Snatch. Tailwind. Gust. Technical machines. TM's Protect. Substitute. Screech. Dark Pulse. Hidden Power. Electric. Pokémon. Shiny Slowpoke. Dark Green. Gender. Male. Level. 22. Type. Water plus Psychic. Ability. Oblivious. Held items. None. Egg moves. Rest. Rain Dance. Teleport. Basic moves. Curse. Yawn. Tackle. Growl. Water Gun. Confusion. Disable. Taunt moves. Calm Mind. Psyshock. Technical machines. TM's Protect. Hidden Power. Fire. Pokémon. Ghastly. Dark Green. Gender. Male. Level. 14. Type. Ghost plus Poison. Ability. Levitate. Held items. None. Egg moves. Fire Punch. Scary Face. Haze. Basic moves. Hypnosis. Lick. Spite. Mean Look. Curse. Taunt moves. Rest. Shadow Ball. Psychic. Skill Swap. Snore. Technical machines. TM's Protect. Hidden Power. Grass. Sleep Talk Chapter 63. Vermilion City is a seemingly peaceful city that is home to the largest Pokémon Association in the Kanto region. However, it also houses a dark secret as it was a significant base for Team Rocket. Despite this, the city remains tranquil due to the presence of Lieutenant Surge, a powerful figure who commands respect and fear from even the toughest members of Team Rocket. Cain was no stranger to Vermilion City's shady underworld. He knew that as long as one kept a low profile, there was little to worry about. But Umbra had tasked him with traveling to Mahogany Town, in the Johto region, where the gym was run by the notorious Price, the teacher of winter's harshness. Mahogany Town was under his watchful eye, and his reputation preceded him as a force to be reckoned with. If not for his eccentric personality, he would definitely have been one of the Elite Four. Price's influence over Mahogany Town emphasized its significance to the Pokémon Association, making Cain's mission even more challenging with numerous unpredictable factors and a high level of risk. As the ship docked in Vermilion City's bustling port, a young man stepped off, accompanied by a pale pink slowpoke. With a human skin mask disguising his true identity and an association trainer's outfit blending in with the crowd, Cain was ready for his next adventure. Breathing in the salty sea air and feeling the solid ground beneath his feet, Cain finally arrived in Vermilion City, the largest port city in the Kanto region and a hub for maritime trade. The city's famous Vermilion Harbor was where grand cruise ships like the SS and SS Aqua and Sea Gallop frequently docked. Vermilion City may not have been the most developed in the Kanto region, but its annual tax revenue from the port allowed it to thrive. The same went for the powerful Team Rocket, who had claimed Vermilion City as their own and were raking in huge profits. As Cain stepped into the bustling streets, the last rays of the sun were fading into the horizon. The city was alive with activity, as traders and travelers bustled about their business, their faces lit up by the glow of street lamps and shop windows. The port city was no stranger to travelers, and Cain blended in with the crowd, his slowpoke by his side and a pokeball at his waist marking him as a seasoned trainer. But as he strolled down the crowded streets, one thing weighed heavily on Cain's mind: his empty pockets. The harsh realities of life as a penniless trainer set in, and he knew he had to take action. He followed a sign to a shop that sold Pokémon items, eager to cash in on some of the less valuable items he'd accumulated during his time on Purgatory Island. As he made the trade, he couldn't help but think of the geocentric cleansing milk he was forced to hide. But he consoled himself with the knowledge that the association ID card Umbra had given him would transfer the 5,000 Pokedollars he earned to his bank account. Cain observed his bank balance change to 5,000 Pokedollars, then promptly left the shop and headed to the Pokémon Center. The Vermilion City Pokémon Center was a magnificent sight to behold, stretching 2 football fields wide and towering with 6 floors of top-notch medical facilities. A symbol of the Pokémon Association's power and wealth. Cain approached the entrance donning the association's recognizable uniform. The guards took one look at his ID card and let him pass without so much as a second glance. Nurse Joy was just one of many medical experts at the Pokémon Center, where teams of medical staff and chancies worked tirelessly to meet the needs of trainers. And yet, despite the chaos, there was a sense of order in the air, as trainers patiently waited their turn for treatment. In addition to its specialized medical expertise, the Pokémon Center also provided lodging facilities, making it the perfect place for Cain to fulfill both of his needs. As a seasoned trainer, he knew all too well the dangers of hidden injuries and the importance of keeping his Pokémon in top shape. Although Cain's AI system was capable of scanning for hidden injuries in Pokémon, its database was limited in its knowledge of such injuries, leaving him feeling unsure. To alleviate this concern, Cain decided to rely on the latest medical technology from the association to conduct a thorough examination of his Pokémon. Speaking of technology, Team Rocket was teaming with scientists, many of their technologies surpassing even those of the Pokémon Association. But when it came to medical advancements, the association had them beat. The Pokémon Center, a beacon of cutting-edge medical prowess, was one of the most crucial pieces in the association's arsenal. Without the healing touch of the Pokémon Center, trainers in the association would be at a disadvantage, their combat power hindered. But with the center's existence, the association remained steadfast, their power unchallenged. Next up, number 47, blared the loudspeaker, and Cain made his way to the designated window, where a smiling medical staff greeted him with professional grace. "Good day, sir," the medical staff addressed Cain with a warm smile. "May I see your association ID card and Pokémon for the checkup?" Cain returned the smile and handed over his ID card and Pokeballs. "Of course, here you go. I'd like a comprehensive examination for all 3 of my Pokémon." Although Cain kept Murkrow and Ghastly hidden from the public eye, as a nameless trainer, he knew he wouldn't attract any undue attention. The medical staff inserted the card into a small device and the information about Cain appeared on the screen. "That'll be 3,000 Pokedollars for the full body examination of your 3 Pokémon. Will that be cash or a deduction from your bank account?" "Deduct it from my bank account, please," Cain replied. "Certainly," the medical staff said with a professional smile. "And would you like to register for lodging for the night? It's an additional 500 Pokedollars. "Yes, I would. Deduct it all together, if you don't mind." The medical staff nodded and quickly processed the transaction. "All set. Here's your ID and room card. The examination may take some time, so feel free to wait in the reception or in your room. We'll let you know as soon as it's done." Cain took his ID and room card and let out a low whistle. "Wow, the association is really taking care of me. I only have to pay 1,000 Pokedollars per Pokémon. Not too shabby." But he knew that for the average civilian trainer, such a sum of money would be a significant burden. In the Pokémon world, a trainer's life was not for the faint of heart. It was a fast-paced, adrenaline-fueled journey that required more than just heart and soul. It also required a hefty sum of Poke dollars. The average office worker's salary was almost 10 to 20,000 Poke dollars, and being a trainer meant burning through that kind of money at a rapid pace, something not all families could afford. That's where the notorious Team Rocket came in, offering a chance for aspiring trainers who couldn't afford the cost. But joining wasn't as simple as signing up. It was a two-way street. Those selected to be direct members had to go through trials and rigorous training, while for the average Joe, the recruitment process was simple and straightforward. But what they gained in ease of entry, they lost in the possibility of escape. Once you joined Team Rocket, it was nearly impossible to leave. Cain decided to explore the Pokémon Center to pass the time. He wandered the halls, taking in the 6-story building that housed everything a trainer and their Pokémon could need, from a simple treatment center on the 1st floor to a cafeteria on the 3rd floor and even residential areas on the 4th and 5th floors. The 6th floor was reserved for important members of the association, and Cain didn't have the clearance to enter. Behind the Pokémon Center was a vast open space, the training area for Pokémon, and well-equipped battlefields for trainers. The design was smart, the facilities complete, and the price was just right. Cain couldn't help but be impressed with what the Pokémon Center had to offer. Chapter 64. It took almost half an hour to navigate the sprawling Pokémon Center. After a restless wait in the reception room, Cain finally received word that the examination was over. To his delight, he learned that they were all in prime condition and had even been praised by the staff for their exceptional development. Cain simply nodded, acknowledging the praise. "I just wanted to make sure my team is in top condition," he said. The staff member beamed. "Well, you're definitely doing a great job." Cain thanked the staff member once more before he released Slowpoke and made his way towards the cafeteria on the 3rd floor. It was well past dinner time and he was starving. "Come on, Slowpoke," Cain said, giving the Pokémon a playful pat on the head. "Let's go grab a bite at the cafeteria. The food there is different from your usual barbecued meat and grilled fish, but I promise it's just as delicious." Slowpoke's eyes lit up at the mention of food, letting out a joyful cry. It had a voracious appetite and was always ready for a good meal. As they entered the cafeteria, Cain noticed that it was filling up fast. There were trainers lining up to get their food, chatting and laughing with friends and their Pokémon. Slowpoke kept close to Cain's side, confusion no longer necessary as it had finally learned to keep pace with its trainer. But their arrival caused quite a stir. Everyone in the room turned to stare at Slowpoke, whispers spreading like wildfire. "That Slowpoke's color doesn't look right." "Stupid, it's a shiny Slowpoke, just a lighter shade. Lucky trainer, if you ask me." "Wow, look at the speed on that Slowpoke. Who's that trainer? Don't recognize him. Not from around here, I'd wager." Cain couldn't help but frown at the attention they were receiving. He knew that Slowpoke's unique appearance would draw eyes, but he didn't want to feel like they were on display in a zoo. Cain had intended to dine in the cafeteria, but the growing sense of unease around him made him reconsider. He knew that he would have to be on guard, lest he find himself surrounded. He packed food for his 3 Pokémon, as well as some for himself, before making a hasty exit. With a flick of his wrist, he commanded Slowpoke to use confusion to carry the food and lead the way back to his room. But just as he was about to make his escape, a pale-faced young man and 2 black-clad bodyguards appeared in his path, blocking his way. The young man was dressed in designer clothes, his hair neatly combed, and a hint of a smirk playing on his lips. It was clear that he was a man who enjoyed the finer things in life. Slowpoke was unperturbed by the man's arrogance. Its blue eyes flickered with a sense of malice, for the Pokémon could sense something was amiss. The young man's eyes lit up with interest upon seeing Slowpoke, as if he had discovered a new toy. "I'd like to have a word with you," he announced haughtily, addressing Cain directly. Cain's expression was one of stone. He stared at the young man and his bodyguards, silently making his way around them with Slowpoke in tow. He gave no order to attack, but Slowpoke remained at the ready, waiting for its next command. The sound of footsteps echoed through the hall as leather shoes hit the ground. The young man and his bodyguards once again stood in Cain's path. Cain's eyes blazed with fury. He fixed the young man with a glare and snarled, "Get out of my way." The young man was taken aback by the ferocity in Cain's voice. He had always been pampered and had never been spoken to in such a manner. He was about to give the order for his bodyguards to attack when he remembered where he was. His face flushed with anger, unable to find the words to respond. Undeterred, Cain pushed forward, ignoring the bodyguards blocking his path. Slowpoke used confusion to effortlessly push them aside, allowing Cain to pass. The young man's face contorted with frustration as he watched Cain and Slowpoke ascend the stairs. "Don't even think about leaving the Pokémon Center," he shouted after them. As a local playboy with a reputation for collecting rare Pokémon, the young man had raced to the center upon hearing of Cain's Slowpoke. But before he could even make an offer, Cain had rejected him. In the Pokémon Center, violence was prohibited, so the young man could only seethe with frustration as he watched Cain leave. Cain made his way to the 4th floor, unlocking the door to his room with a swipe of his keycard. Inside, he released Murkrow and Ghastly, who let out joyful cries. Caw! Jeje! They had been cooped up for too long and were eager to stretch their wings and legs. "Ghastly, stick close and keep to the shadows," Cain commanded. "And Murkrow, I hate to do this to you, but you'll have to stay in the Pokeball for a while longer." Meanwhile, Slowpoke stood at the side, with its head hung low, blaming itself for causing trouble for Cain. Cain squatted down and patted Slowpoke's back, offering a reassuring smile. "It's all right, buddy. That guy was just a clown. Don't let him get to you." Cain took out the food he had brought for the Pokémon, placing it in front of each of them. The unique smells wafted through the air, tempting and intriguing. Yet, none of the Pokémon immediately began to eat. They all waited for Cain's signal, a habit they developed on the Trial Island, a form of mutual respect for their companions. "All right, let's dig in," Cain said as he distributed the food. "These are all treats you've never tried before." He sat down on the ground with his legs crossed, joining his Pokémon for dinner. Cain had brought canned fish for Slowpoke, a special blend made with a variety of fish, its favorite thanks to its strong fishy scent. For Murkrow, there were different cuts of chicken and fish. Despite being a bird, it had a taste for meat. Ghastly's granular food was a rarity in the Pokémon Center. Made specifically by the Pokémon Association for Ghost-type Pokémon, each crunchy bite was infused with rich death energy, Ghastly's favorite sustenance. At the sound of Cain's command, the 3 Pokémon eagerly dug in. As they dined, Cain ruminated on the encounter with the young man. His words of comfort to Slowpoke were truthful, as he truly disregarded the young man's threats. With the human skin mask removed and Slowpoke safely tucked away in its Pokeball, the young man would never recognize Cain. Even if he did manage to track him down, Cain was confident in his ability to end the young man's life with the techniques he'd honed in his past life and escape unscathed. In the worst-case scenario, Slowpoke's teleport was always a last resort. But exposing that move would only invite more danger and increase the number of those seeking to harm Slowpoke. As Cain watched his Pokémon savor their meals, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and joy. Now, with no hidden dangers lurking in the wilderness, he and his Pokémon could feast and enjoy their meals without a care in the world. The food at the Pokémon Center may not have been gourmet, but to Slowpoke and the others who had survived on the Trial Island, it was a feast fit for royalty. The hardships of his past life had led Cain to view Pokémon as mere tools, but Murkrow had opened his eyes to the truth. It was then that Cain realized the true value of his bond with his Pokémon. They were not just creatures to be used and manipulated, but living beings with thoughts and emotions. And if treated with kindness and respect, they would go to great lengths to protect and defend their trainer. In this brutal and merciless world, Cain's Pokémon were the one soft spot in his heart. They were his everything, and he would protect them at any cost. Chapter 65. As the sun rose over Vermilion City, Cain knew he had to act fast. He peeled off the human skin mask that had served as his disguise and stashed Slowpoke back in its Pokeball. As he emerged from the Pokémon Center, he was met with the cold, penetrating gaze of 2 black-clad bodyguards waiting outside, goons the young man from the day before had sent to keep an eye on Cain. But Cain didn't let their presence rattle him. He strode past the bodyguards, not sparing them a glance. After walking a considerable distance, he darted into a nearby alley and hastily put on his disguise once more. One human skin mask just isn't enough in this world, Cain mused to himself. I'll have to stock up next chance I get. Having a few different faces could be a lifesaver when trouble was lurking around every corner. Emerging from the alley, Cain was a changed man. Or rather, a changed Pokémon trainer. He had a plan, and it involved reaching the Johto region as quickly as possible. He had 2 options. Take a cruise ship directly from Vermilion City to Olivine City, then travel from there to Mahogany Town, or go to Saffron City first, then take the magnet train to Goldenrod City in Johto. Initially, the cruise ship seemed like the quickest and most convenient choice. But after checking with the Pokémon Center staff, Cain learned that the latest ship had already set sail, and the next one wouldn't leave for another 4 days. Time was of the essence, and Cain couldn't afford to waste it waiting for a slow-moving ship. With his plan set, Cain set out for Saffron City, the first step on his journey to the Johto region. He knew that taking the magnet train would be the quickest route, so he made his way to the bus terminal in Vermilion City, determined to catch the 9 a.m. bus to Saffron. Dressed in the standard association trainer uniform and a plain human skin mask, Cain blended in with the other travelers and bought his ticket without drawing any attention. He found a seat in the waiting area and passed the time reading the latest association newspaper. But as he skimmed through its pages, he stumbled upon a piece of news that caught his eye. The headline read, "Association Intermediate Investigator Eliminates Team Rocket Base, Promoted to Senior Investigator." Cain wouldn't have paid it much attention had it not been for the name of the senior investigator Lance. Lance was a future Elite Four of the Kanto region and the champion of the Johto region after the split between the Kanto and Johto associations. He was also the next leader of the Dragon Tamer clan, a name that Cain knew all too well. Speaking of which, through years of growth and expansion, the association has established its presence in multiple regions, becoming a colossus in the Pokémon world. Everything from the rules and regulations that govern this world are written and enforced by the association. The origins of the association remain shrouded in mystery, but one thing's for sure, it's thanks to their rise that humans and Pokémon now coexist in peace. Before their establishment, the world was plagued by wars, division and chaos, until a group of visionary leaders banded together and formed the association, unifying the forces and bringing order to the land. But make no mistake, the Pokémon world is vast and the association's hold on power is strongest in the Kanto and Johto regions, with its headquarters standing tall on the summit of Mt. Silver, located at the crossroads of these two regions. However, there are still pockets of the world where the association's control is weaker, like the recently discovered Alola region. Though most folks outside the higher-ups of the association have no idea it even exists. But even in these lands, the association still wields a certain amount of power through their Elite Four and Champion, who serve as symbols of their absolute strength. Though let's be real, the Elite Four and Champion of the Kanto region are the cream of the crop, the strongest of the strong. In this thriving region, where the Pokémon Association is in full swing, geniuses abound and competition for the top spots is fierce. The trainers who rise to the top, to take their rightful place among the Elite Four and Champion, are truly the best of the best. And it's because of this surplus of talent that the Indigo League was divided into the Kanto and Johto regions. There's only so much room at the top, and with so many vying for those coveted seats, it was deemed necessary to expand. But let's not forget, the Pokémon Association holds the reins, and they choose the Elite Four and Champion of each region. No one wants to look foolish, and dividing the Kanto region was the inevitable solution. It was this division that allowed Lance to soar to new heights, securing his place as champion of the Johto region. But why wasn't he the champion of Kanto, you ask? Well, let's just say, he's got a little blemish on his record that can't be erased. Lorelei, a formidable member of the Kanto region's Elite Four known for her Ice-type Pokémon, posed a significant obstacle for Lance, an aspiring Dragon-type trainer. To become a champion, one must defeat all members of the Elite Four, but Lorelei's Ice-type Pokémon were a bane for Dragon types and her unwavering personality meant she wouldn't back down for anyone, not even the soon-to-be Johto region champion, Lance. Lance's heritage was a mix of the Kanto and Johto regions, his father from the former and his mother from the latter, so his title as Johto champion was not considered a crossing of borders. In the Kanto region, the champion's throne had been vacant until Professor Oak's grandson, Gary Oak, claimed the title for a year. However, that is a story for another time. Currently, Lance has become a senior investigator at the association and is poised to assume the role of chief investigator. Once he assumes that role, he would challenge the Elite Four. Chapter 66. The prestige of the association had been fading for decades, and their grip on the region was slipping. But they saw an opportunity to turn things around. They would showcase their direct members in the newspapers, with Lance as one of their leading lights. It was a calculated move, a play for future power. They also loosened the reins on the civilian trainers. And if they could control the trainers, they could control the region. In the early days of the association, when it was a coalition of many forces, the profession of Pokémon trainer was only open to the upper echelons. Civilians were seen as second-class citizens and didn't have the rights or resources to become trainers. But as peace settled over the land and battles became fewer, the forces grew more powerful and the association's control weakened. With the opening up of the profession, the association established gyms and Pokémon centers to support the trainers. They invested resources to help the civilians grow, and over several generations of training, the number of direct members of the association increased. This not only stopped the rise of forces with hidden agendas, but also helped to stabilize society. But being a trainer was much harder for civilians than for the direct members of the association. They had to play by the association's rules, and the road was long and steep. Trainers in the association were divided into two categories: the direct members and the non-direct members. The latter, often civilians, obtained their first Pokémon through their own means before meeting the association's rigorous standards. They were the underdogs, fighting their way to recognition. But direct members? They were the chosen ones. At a certain age, they were given a choice between 3 Pokémon with exceptional potential, a Pokédex that marked their identity, and all the benefits that came with being a direct member, like free treatment at Pokémon centers and free accommodation. They were living the dream. One's status as a direct member or non-direct member was determined at birth, but that didn't mean the line was set in stone. With great contributions to the association, they could become a direct member, securing their place among the elite and ensuring their descendants would be direct members as well. This, however, was no easy feat. Only the truly exceptional, those who could rise above the masses, could earn the status of direct member. But becoming a direct member wasn't limited to being a Pokémon trainer. Those who made significant contributions in any field, from Pokémon professors to Pokémon breeders, would be granted direct member status. Still, there was a glimmer of hope for those who were unable to climb out of the quagmire but daring enough to take a risk. For them, joining Team Rocket was the ticket to change their fate and make a mark on the world. All it took was a willingness to risk everything. Attention passengers, the bus to Saffron City is about to depart. Please make your way to Gate A3. Cain jolted back to reality, putting away the newspaper, and making his way to the aforementioned gate. Settling into his window seat, Cain watched as the city gradually receded into the distance. "I'm back," he whispered to himself, filled with excitement and adventure. Hours later, Cain arrived in the heart of Kanto, Saffron City. This city was a hub for commerce and industry, with the Sylph Company's towering headquarters standing tall at its center and 2 Pokémon gyms nestled in the northeast corner. Saffron City also had the most comprehensive transportation network, including the magnet train station connecting it to the Johto region and an airport that connected it to all corners of the land. The Pokémon Association knew its importance, but so did other forces lurking in the shadows. Team Rocket, one of the most powerful criminal organizations, had a presence here, led by the master of psychic Pokémon, Sabrina. Battles erupted everywhere, from the main square to the backstreets. The residents were no strangers to the chaos, and some even placed bets on the outcomes. Trainers of all regions, from Hoenn to Unova, and beyond, brought their Pokémon to test their mettle. But there was another side to this battle city, one that operated in the shadows. Underground arenas catered to those who sought riches and thrills through illegal battles. Some trainers fought for their lives, while others fought for the entertainment of the wealthy. Saffron City, the city of desires. A place where the line between right and wrong was blurred, where the lure of wealth and resources attracted all sorts of characters, from Pokémon hunters to assassins. Although the association had tried to bolster its public security, it was still a city that required a certain level of caution. The gray and black markets were too numerous for the guards to keep a watchful eye on. Cain stepped out of the bus, the clock striking noon. He had been cooped up for 3 hours, his body stiff from the ride. He donned his ordinary trainer's uniform, blending seamlessly into the bustling city, and released Slowpoke from its Pokeball. In other cities, it might have caused a commotion. But in Saffron City, where wealth and resources were all that mattered, the sight of a shiny Pokémon was nothing out of the ordinary. Despite it being just a stopover for Cain, he couldn't resist the opportunity to upgrade his tools. He was in need of a special set of Pokeblock crafting tools, something that would take his training to the next level. His current tools, though adequate, could only make intermediate-level Pokeblocks. But with the right tools, he could create advanced-level Pokeblocks with better effects for his beloved Pokémons. Intermediate Pokeblocks were a necessary step on the road to greatness, but they were only the beginning. Advanced Pokeblocks could take a Pokémon's power to the next level, doubling their growth rate and unlocking hidden potential. And the breeders who made these coveted treats? They were the stuff of legends, highly sought after by trainers everywhere and protected by the association like precious gems. To work for an advanced breeder, even for just a single job, was an honor few would ever know. But becoming an advanced breeder was no simple task. It took more than just the ability to craft advanced Pokeblocks. There were only 100 in the association, and they were treated like royalty, their skills passed down through the ages. For Cain, the journey to become an advanced breeder was just beginning. He needed the tools to craft his own advanced Pokeblocks, and he wasn't afraid to brave the dangers of Saffron City to get them. Money flowed like water to those with the power to protect it. And Cain was determined to be one of those people. Saffron City was a city of contrasts, and its black market was no exception. As one of the largest underground markets in the Kanto region, it was both a beacon of opportunity and a den of danger. The black market was controlled by the notorious Team Rocket, who raked in a significant portion of their annual income from its dealings, with gym leader Sabrina as its ruthless ruler. Her temperamental personality and powerful psychic powers meant that no one dared to challenge her rule. But for those with the courage and the coin, the black market was a veritable cornucopia of rare Pokémon items and creatures with impressive capabilities. One could even purchase a pseudo-legendary Pokémon if they had the funds. Cain was no stranger to the black market, but he knew that finding specialized Pokeblock crafting tools wouldn't be a mere shopping spree. For those who lacked the strength to protect their purchases, the black market was a place of certain demise. A labyrinth of danger and temptation where even the toughest trainers hesitated to tread. It was a place that whispered of rare and exotic goods, a place where a man could find anything he wanted, except legendary/mythical beasts, obviously. But why risk it all in the black market, you may ask? Well, for starters, the prices at the shopping malls were steep, and Cain was down to his last 1,000 Pokedollars. And let's be real, he had a few things to sell that wouldn't stand up to the light of day. But first, lunch. He stopped at a proper-looking hotel, used his association ID card to book a room by the hour, and ordered food for himself and his Pokémon. Of course, he made sure his room was free of any surveillance equipment. The food arrived, piping hot and fragrant, and Cain savored every bite. But with each forkful, he felt the weight of his dwindling funds. He had spent all but 200 Pokedollars, leaving him barely enough to make it to the black market. Cain knew he couldn't dawdle during lunch. Time was of the essence, and his Pokémon were the epitome of efficiency. They scarfed down their meal, new and exotic flavors exploding in their mouths, before obediently returning to their Pokeballs. Ghastly, too, melted back into Cain's shadow, waiting for the next command. He hailed a taxi and within a half hour, they were at the entrance of the notorious black market of Saffron City. Cain's 200 Pokedollars were spent in an instant, but he didn't let it faze him. He had arrived at his destination, and that was all that mattered. Cain donned his Team Rocket uniform, and slipped on a black hooded cloak, along with a wide-brimmed hat that shielding his face from prying eyes. He stepped into a seemingly ordinary Pokémon shop, shelves lined with average items, a few people milling about. A friendly receptionist approached him with a professional smile. "What can we do for you today?" she asked. "Our shop is the best and the cheapest. We guarantee your satisfaction." Although Cain was draped in a voluminous black cloak, the receptionist didn't bat an eye. In the sprawling metropolis of Saffron City, you could never judge a person by their appearance. And Cain was no exception. He didn't say a word, but instead pulled out his Team Rocket ID card from his pocket. Umbra had already rebranded Cain from a trial taker to a respectable Team Rocket grunt by the time he left the island. The receptionist's expression shifted as soon as she caught sight of the Team Rocket ID. Without a word, she led Cain into a dimly lit room. She swiped Cain's ID through the computer, scanning the information on the screen with a sigh of relief. Handing the card back to Cain, she reached under the table and pressed a button. A hidden door swung open in the floor. "Go ahead. No fighting or trouble allowed," the receptionist warned expressionlessly before turning on her heel and leaving the room. Cain was no stranger to this routine. He had been here countless times in his past life and descended the stairs of the hidden door without hesitation. The secret door sealed behind him, leaving no trace. As he walked down the stairs, a soft light flickered on, guiding the way. It took Cain nearly 5 minutes to reach the bottom. The cramped corridor opened up into a massive hall, with corridors leading off in every direction, connecting to all corners of Saffron City. There were 10 such halls in the black market, each with 10 branching corridors. Although Saffron City was enormous, the black market was able to tap into nearly every nook and cranny of the city via these pathways, guarded solely by Team Rocket. Stepping out of the hall and onto the busy street, Cain saw a horde of people, cold and emotionless, going about their business. Many, like Cain, were shrouded in black cloaks. He saw Team Rocket grunts, who didn't bother hiding their affiliation, strutting down the middle of the street with arrogance. No one dared to challenge them, even giving them a wide berth. Team Rocket were the reigning power in the black market, but Cain didn't plan on announcing his own affiliation. Just because Team Rocket members had privileges didn't mean everyone was scared of them. Show off too much value without matching strength, and you'd quickly become a target for hyena-like fugitives. "Come on out, Murkrow." Cain released Murkrow from its Pokeball, letting it perch on his shoulder. Murkrow's weight had increased again, but so had the strength of Cain's physique. Now, the bird was a manageable weight on his shoulder. Releasing Murkrow was a necessary show of power. To avoid being singled out in the black market, Cain had to display his muscle and might, and it produced the desired effect. The covert gazes turned away from Cain, intimidated by the fierce aura and faint scent of blood exuded by Murkrow. In the bustling black market, the air hummed with the bargaining and bartering of adventurers and traders alike. Every corner and alley held a unique array of goods, ranging from rare finds to cleverly crafted fakes. The alleys reserved for trainers to sell their own items were often the most chaotic, but Cain didn't have time for such trivialities. His goal was to amass enough currency to purchase specialized Pokeblock crafting tools, something that only the larger shops would carry. So he headed straight to the largest Pokemon shop in the market, operated by Team Rocket themselves. As he entered the large, brightly lit shop, he was greeted by the sight of a dazzling array of Pokemon items. Throngs of people haggled and bartered, their voices echoing off the walls. Cain wove his way through the crowds with ease, his eyes locked on his target, the appraisal counter. A sign overhead declared its purpose, and behind the counter sat over a dozen steely-eyed Team Rocket members, each with the iconic badge gleaming on their chest. The appraisal process was straightforward and efficient. For a fee of 500 Pokedollars, the Team Rocket appraiser would evaluate an item and assign a value. Team Rocket's reputation for impartial appraisals had earned them a good name in the black market, and many trainers came to them for a second opinion on the worth of their goods. But Team Rocket's purchasing price was not high, so many trainers would rent stalls on the street to sell their items for a higher price. This was a time-consuming process, but for those who didn't need the money immediately, it was worth it. Cain, however, was in a hurry. He pulled out a glass bottle from his Team Rocket belt and placed it in front of the appraiser. The bottle contained a milky white fluid that radiated a soft, otherworldly glow, like the remnants of a shooting star. Geocentric cleansing milk was the most suitable item Cain had to exchange for Pokedollars. He'd used a relatively small bottle and filled it to the brim with a portion of his stock, which amounted to roughly 1/20th of his total. Chapter 66. The prestige of the association had been fading for decades, and their grip on the region was slipping. But they saw an opportunity to turn things around. They would showcase their direct members in the newspapers, with Lance as one of their leading lights. It was a calculated move, a play for future power. They also loosened the reins on the civilian trainers. And if they could control the trainers, they could control the region. In the early days of the association, when it was a coalition of many forces, the profession of Pokemon trainer was only open to the upper echelons. Civilians were seen as second-class citizens and didn't have the rights or resources to become trainers. But as peace settled over the land and battles became fewer, the forces grew more powerful and the association's control weakened. With the opening up of the profession, the association established gyms and Pokemon centers to support the trainers. They invested resources to help the civilians grow, and over several generations of training, the number of direct members of the association increased. This not only stopped the rise of forces with hidden agendas, but also helped to stabilize society. But being a trainer was much harder for civilians than for the direct members of the association. They had to play by the association's rules, and the road was long and steep. Trainers in the association were divided into two categories, the direct members and the non-direct members. The latter, often civilians, obtained their first Pokemon through their own means before meeting the association's rigorous standards. They were the underdogs, fighting their way to recognition. But direct members? They were the chosen ones. At a certain age, they were given a choice between 3 Pokemon with exceptional potential, a Pokédex that marked their identity, and all the benefits that came with being a direct member, like free treatment at Pokemon centers and free accommodation. They were living the dream. One's status as a direct member or non-direct member was determined at birth, but that didn't mean the line was set in stone. With great contributions to the association, they could become a direct member, securing their place among the elite and ensuring their descendants would be direct members as well. This, however, was no easy feat. Only the truly exceptional, those who could rise above the masses, could earn the status of direct member. But becoming a direct member wasn't limited to being a Pokemon trainer. Those who made significant contributions in any field, from Pokemon professors to Pokemon breeders, would be granted direct member status. Still, there was a glimmer of hope for those who were unable to climb out of the quagmire but daring enough to take a risk. For them, joining Team Rocket was the ticket to change their fate and make a mark on the world. All it took was a willingness to risk everything. Attention passengers, the bus to Saffron City is about to depart. Please make your way to Gate A3. Cain jolted back to reality, putting away the newspaper, and making his way to the aforementioned gate. Settling into his window seat, Cain watched as the city gradually receded into the distance. "I'm back," he whispered to himself, filled with excitement and adventure. Hours later, Cain arrived in the heart of Kanto, Saffron City. This city was a hub for commerce and industry, with the Sylph Company's towering headquarters standing tall at its center and 2 Pokemon gyms nestled in the northeast corner. Saffron City also had the most comprehensive transportation network, including the magnet train station connecting it to the Johto region and an airport that connected it to all corners of the land. The Pokemon Association knew its importance, but so did other forces lurking in the shadows. Team Rocket, one of the most powerful criminal organizations, had a presence here. Led by the master of psychic Pokémon, Sabrina. Battles erupted everywhere, from the main square to the back streets. The residents were no strangers to the chaos, and some even placed bets on the outcomes. Trainers of all regions, from Hoenn to Unova, and beyond, brought their Pokémon to test their mettle. But there was another side to this battle city, one that operated in the shadows. Underground arenas catered to those who sought riches and thrills through illegal battles. Some trainers fought for their lives, while others fought for the entertainment of the wealthy. Saffron City, the city of desires. A place where the line between right and wrong was blurred, where the lure of wealth and resources attracted all sorts of characters, from Pokémon hunters to assassins. Although the association had tried to bolster its public security, it was still a city that required a certain level of caution. The gray and black markets were too numerous for the guards to keep a watchful eye on. Cain stepped out of the bus, the clock striking noon. He had been cooped up for 3 hours, his body stiff from the ride. He donned his ordinary trainer's uniform, blending seamlessly into the bustling city, and released Slowpoke from its Pokeball. In other cities, it might have caused a commotion. But in Saffron City, where wealth and resources were all that mattered, the sight of a shiny Pokémon was nothing out of the ordinary. Despite it being just a stopover for Cain, he couldn't resist the opportunity to upgrade his tools. He was in need of a special set of Pokeblock crafting tools, something that would take his training to the next level. His current tools, though adequate, could only make intermediate-level Pokeblocks. But with the right tools, he could create advanced-level Pokeblocks with better effects for his beloved Pokémons. Intermediate Pokeblocks were a necessary step on the road to greatness, but they were only the beginning. Advanced Pokeblocks could take a Pokémon's power to the next level, doubling their growth rate and unlocking hidden potential. And the breeders who made these coveted treats? They were the stuff of legends, highly sought after by trainers everywhere and protected by the association like precious gems. To work for an advanced breeder, even for just a single job, was an honor few would ever know. But becoming an advanced breeder was no simple task. It took more than just the ability to craft advanced Pokeblocks. There were only 100 in the association, and they were treated like royalty, their skills passed down through the ages. For Cain, the journey to become an advanced breeder was just beginning. He needed the tools to craft his own advanced Pokeblocks, and he wasn't afraid to brave the dangers of Saffron City to get them. Money flowed like water to those with the power to protect it. And Cain was determined to be one of those people. Saffron City was a city of contrasts, and its black market was no exception. As one of the largest underground markets in the Kanto region, it was both a beacon of opportunity and a den of danger. The black market was controlled by the notorious Team Rocket, who raked in a significant portion of their annual income from its dealings, with gym leader Sabrina as its ruthless ruler. Her temperamental personality and powerful psychic powers meant that no one dared to challenge her rule. But for those with the courage and the coin, the black market was a veritable cornucopia of rare Pokémon items and creatures with impressive capabilities. One could even purchase a pseudo-legendary Pokémon if they had the funds. Cain was no stranger to the black market, but he knew that finding specialized Pokeblock crafting tools wouldn't be a mere shopping spree. For those who lacked the strength to protect their purchases, the black market was a place of certain demise. A labyrinth of danger and temptation where even the toughest trainers hesitated to tread. It was a place that whispered of rare and exotic goods, a place where a man could find anything he wanted, except legendary/mythical beasts, obviously. But why risk it all in the black market, you may ask? Well, for starters, the prices at the shopping malls were steep, and Cain was down to his last 1,000 Pokedollars. And let's be real, he had a few things to sell that wouldn't stand up to the light of day. But first, lunch. He stopped at a proper-looking hotel, used his association ID card to book a room by the hour, and ordered food for himself and his Pokémon. Of course, he made sure his room was free of any surveillance equipment. The food arrived, piping hot and fragrant, and Cain savored every bite. But with each forkful, he felt the weight of his dwindling funds. He had spent all but 200 Pokedollars, leaving him barely enough to make it to the black market. Cain knew he couldn't dawdle during lunch. Time was of the essence, and his Pokémon were the epitome of efficiency. They scarfed down their meal, new and exotic flavors exploding in their mouths, before obediently returning to their Pokeballs. Ghastly, too, melted back into Cain's shadow, waiting for the next command. He hailed a taxi and within a half hour, they were at the entrance of the notorious black market of Saffron City. Cain's 200 Pokedollars were spent in an instant, but he didn't let it faze him. He had arrived at his destination, and that was all that mattered. Cain donned his Team Rocket uniform, and slipped on a black hooded cloak, along with a wide-brimmed hat that shielding his face from prying eyes. He stepped into a seemingly ordinary Pokémon shop, shelves lined with average items, a few people milling about. A friendly receptionist approached him with a professional smile. "What can we do for you today?" she asked. "Our shop is the best and the cheapest. We guarantee your satisfaction." Although Cain was draped in a voluminous black cloak, the receptionist didn't bat an eye. In the sprawling metropolis of Saffron City, you could never judge a person by their appearance. And Cain was no exception. He didn't say a word, but instead pulled out his Team Rocket ID card from his pocket. Umbra had already rebranded Cain from a trial taker to a respectable Team Rocket grunt by the time he left the island. The receptionist's expression shifted as soon as she caught sight of the Team Rocket ID. Without a word, she led Cain into a dimly lit room. She swiped Cain's ID through the computer, scanning the information on the screen with a sigh of relief. Handing the card back to Cain, she reached under the table and pressed a button. A hidden door swung open in the floor. "Go ahead. No fighting or trouble allowed," the receptionist warned expressionlessly before turning on her heel and leaving the room. Cain was no stranger to this routine. He had been here countless times in his past life and descended the stairs of the hidden door without hesitation. The secret door sealed behind him, leaving no trace. As he walked down the stairs, a soft light flickered on, guiding the way. It took Cain nearly 5 minutes to reach the bottom. The cramped corridor opened up into a massive hall, with corridors leading off in every direction, connecting to all corners of Saffron City. There were 10 such halls in the black market, each with 10 branching corridors. Although Saffron City was enormous, the black market was able to tap into nearly every nook and cranny of the city via these pathways, guarded solely by Team Rocket. Stepping out of the hall and onto the busy street, Cain saw a horde of people, cold and emotionless, going about their business. Many, like Cain, were shrouded in black cloaks. He saw Team Rocket grunts, who didn't bother hiding their affiliation, strutting down the middle of the street with arrogance. No one dared to challenge them, even giving them a wide berth. Team Rocket were the reigning power in the black market, but Cain didn't plan on announcing his own affiliation. Just because Team Rocket members had privileges didn't mean everyone was scared of them. Show off too much value without matching strength, and you'd quickly become a target for hyena-like fugitives. "Come on out, Murkrow." Cain released Murkrow from its pokeball, letting it perch on his shoulder. Murkrow's weight had increased again, but so had the strength of Cain's physique. Now, the bird was a manageable weight on his shoulder. Releasing Murkrow was a necessary show of power. To avoid being singled out in the black market, Cain had to display his muscle and might, and it produced the desired effect. The covert gazes turned away from Cain, intimidated by the fierce aura and faint scent of blood exuded by Murkrow. In the bustling black market, the air hummed with the bargaining and bartering of adventurers and traders alike. Every corner and alley held a unique array of goods, ranging from rare finds to cleverly crafted fakes. The alleys reserved for trainers to sell their own items were often the most chaotic, but Cain didn't have time for such trivialities. His goal was to amass enough currency to purchase specialized pokeblock crafting tools, something that only the larger shops would carry. So he headed straight to the largest Pokémon shop in the market, operated by Team Rocket themselves. As he entered the large, brightly lit shop, he was greeted by the sight of a dazzling array of Pokémon items. Throngs of people haggled and bartered, their voices echoing off the walls. Cain wove his way through the crowds with ease, his eyes locked on his target, the appraisal counter. A sign overhead declared its purpose, and behind the counter sat over a dozen steely-eyed Team Rocket members, each with the iconic badge gleaming on their chest. The appraisal process was straightforward and efficient. For a fee of 500 Pokedollars, the Team Rocket appraiser would evaluate an item and assign a value. Team Rocket's reputation for impartial appraisals had earned them a good name in the black market, and many trainers came to them for a second opinion on the worth of their goods. But Team Rocket's purchasing price was not high, so many trainers would rent stalls on the street to sell their items for a higher price. This was a time-consuming process, but for those who didn't need the money immediately, it was worth it. Cain, however, was in a hurry. He pulled out a glass bottle from his Team Rocket belt and placed it in front of the appraiser. The bottle contained a milky white fluid that radiated a soft, otherworldly glow, like the remnants of a shooting star. Geocentric cleansing milk was the most suitable item Cain had to exchange for Pokedollars. He'd used a relatively small bottle and filled it to the brim with a portion of his stock, which amounted to roughly 1/20th of his total. Chapter 67. Cain had made his decision after much contemplation and calculation. To sell too much at once would invite chaos and turmoil, but to sell too little would leave Cain short of the funds he so desperately needed. This amount was just right. The appraiser's rigid demeanor faltered as he laid eyes on the precious item in front of him. He studied the bottle of milky white liquid, his expression changing with each passing moment. He didn't look at Cain, instead focusing all his attention on the bottle. Despite having a good idea of what he was dealing with, he couldn't be certain. Such items were not often brought to the market for appraisal or sale. The appraiser uncorked the bottle with care, and as he did, a mist escaped, carrying with it a delicate fragrance. He was taken aback, his expression a mixture of surprise and wonder. He retrieved a silver needle from his toolkit, dipping it into the liquid. He sniffed it, then licked it with his tongue, and suddenly, his eyes lit up. He carefully corked the bottle and pushed it back toward Cain. "Excuse me, sir, is this for sale or simply for appraisal?" The appraiser's voice was hoarse from disuse, but his excitement was clear. Most of his clients came for appraisals only, and the conversations rarely ventured beyond pricing. Whether they decided to sell or not was entirely up to them. But when the stakes were high, even the most stalwart of appraisers would show their true colors as cunning businessmen. After all, their commissions, which often exceeded their salaries, were determined by the value of the items they acquired after appraisal. And when Cain presented the geocentric cleansing milk, the stakes couldn't have been higher. If he could secure this precious commodity, his commission bonus would be astronomical. "What are you offering?" came a voice, altered and gravelly, from under the hooded black cloak. The appraiser's eyes lit up, but a moment of hesitation crossed his face before he spoke. "This, my friend, is geocentric cleansing milk. I'm sure you're aware of its value. The current market price is 10,000 poke dollars per drop, and this bottle should contain 200 drops. Our Chamber of Commerce is willing to purchase it at market price, bringing the total to 2 million poke dollars." But the appraiser was only testing the waters. The market price of 10,000 poke dollars per drop was only a sham, used to deceive the unsuspecting. Those in the know would never sell geocentric cleansing milk for such a paltry sum. If Cain was unaware of its true value, the appraiser would have hit the jackpot. "If you insist on playing this game, I'll take my business elsewhere. I'm sure there are many who would be eager to vie for it," Cain stated coolly. They thought him an easy mark, but Cain was confident that given enough time, he could sell it for 20,000 poke dollars per drop. He was in a hurry, however, and wanted to avoid any unnecessary complications, which was why he had come here. The appraiser's embarrassment was palpable when he heard Cain's words. It was merely a test, a way for the Chamber of Commerce to turn a profit and for the appraiser to earn a hefty commission if the seller was uninformed. "Ahem. Sir, how about 15,000 poke dollars per drop? That's the highest offer I can authorize," the appraiser coughed softly, maintaining his composed expression. In the world of business, having thick skin was a necessary skill. This offer seemed more reasonable. 15,000 poke dollars was a fair market price, although it was still lower than 20,000 poke dollars. The time and effort required to sell it for that price wasn't worth the profit. 18,000, Cain countered, unfazed by the appraiser's offer. The appraiser was relieved, not angry. He wasn't afraid of a high price, only of Cain not quoting one at all. After all, the ultimate goal was to negotiate and reach a fair agreement. The bargaining continued, each side trying to get the best deal. The appraiser hesitated, then spoke up. "Sir, if you'll excuse me, I need to consult with my supervisor." "Hurry," Cain waved his hand dismissively, eager for the matter to be resolved. The appraiser nodded and rushed into a nearby room. Cain settled into a chair and closed his eyes, his faithful Murkrow perched on his shoulder. After a brief wait, the appraiser returned, accompanied by a rotund, smiling middle-aged man with a protruding belly. Cain took in the man's appearance, his gaze lingering on the shiny Team Rocket badge pinned to his chest. Unlike the others, this badge was brighter, adorned with a golden ring and two faint grooves in the shape of the letter R. It was the badge of a Team Rocket officer. "Sir, allow me to introduce the manager of our shop and a Team Rocket officer, Mr. Ishida." The appraiser introduced the man with reverence. Cain's eyebrows shot up at the introduction. He hadn't encountered someone of such rank since leaving the trial island. And here was one, managing one of the largest shops in the black market. His background must be immense. Ishida wore an oily smile, devoid of the arrogance one might expect from a Team Rocket officer. "Sir, if you'll follow me, let's discuss the matter in our VIP room," Ishida said with a grin, gesturing towards a private room. "Lead the way," Cain replied, nodding in agreement. Ishida chuckled and took the lead, with the appraiser trailing behind with Cain. Despite its moniker, the VIP room was much like the rest of the shop, with a coffee table and leather sofa being its only adornments. Once they were seated, a maid promptly served tea. "Sir, we accept your offer," Ishida stated without hesitation. He was well versed in the market and knew that while Cain's price was steep, the profit margin was still substantial. And they had time on their side. At the same time, He signaled for the appraiser to begin the necessary procedures. Cain's brow furrowed at Ishida's quick agreement. This was too easy. Haha, we don't have any hidden motives. We were just curious if you have any extra geocentric cleansing milk. We'd be willing to pay a higher price for it, Ishida added with a smile. Cain's guard remained up, his vigilance heightened by Ishida's words. Do you think that geocentric cleansing milk is as common as cabbage? He retorted with sarcasm. Ishida's smile never faltered, even in the face of Cain's sharp tongue. He had to be shrewd to manage such a successful shop. Haha, it was just a personal curiosity. If you have anything else to sell in the future, feel free to come to us, Ishida said with a grin. This is our shop's VIP card, Ishida declared, a sly grin spreading across his face as he produced a silver card with the iconic Team Rocket logo. Use it and you'll get a 5% discount on everything you buy. Team Rocket's VIP card, huh? Cain said, eyeing the silver card in Ishida's hand. Not bad. What's the catch? No catch, just a 5% discount on all purchases, Ishida replied. But for a trainer like yourself, I'm sure that percentage can add up to some serious poke dollars. Cain was always on the hunt for ways to save money and increase his wealth, and this VIP card seemed like a no-brainer. He snatched the card from Ishida's hand and slipped it into his pocket. Just then, an appraiser rushed over, a black bank card in hand. Cain's eyes lit up as the appraiser handed it over. Sir, this is an anonymous bank card from the association. It's loaded with 3.6 million poke dollars, the entire sum for the geocentric cleansing milk. Cain took the bank card, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. Oh, and one more thing, Cain added, remembering his original intention for visiting the Team Rocket shop. I want to purchase a set of mid-tier poke block crafting tools. Deduct the cost from this bank card. Ishida's expression froze for a split second before he recovered. Consider it done, he said, his chubby cheeks jiggling as he spoke. I'll have a set of the best mid-tier poke block crafting tools prepared for you right away. Get a move on, Ishida barked at the appraiser, and make sure the quality is top-notch. He was taken aback by the realization that the mysterious figure in the black robe was, in fact, a breeder. But as soon as he focused on the magnificent mercrow perched on the breeder's shoulder, it all clicked into place. The appraiser looked stunned. To be a breeder was a prestigious position, and with the mid-tier poke block crafting tools at his disposal, the breeder would have the ability to mint money with ease. Without a word, the appraiser scampered off to gather the items the breeder, Cain, required. Ha ha! Sir, are you planning on using these tools for yourself or giving them away? Ishida asked, his tone playful. There was a moment of silence before a hoarse voice emerged from under Cain's hood. What difference does it make? Whether I use them for myself or give them away? Oh, no need to misunderstand, sir, Ishida chuckled. If you ever want to sell your poke blocks, you can do so through our store. And as a VIP member, you'll receive a discount on all service fees. Cain simply nodded in response, not saying much. Ishida could tell that the breeder was a man of few words, whether it was a cover or just his nature. Either way, Ishida kept quiet and waited for the items to arrive. Before long, the appraiser returned with a guard in tow, both of them panting from the swift pace they had set. The guard carried a large tray filled with delicate, intricately crafted tools. Ishida motioned for the guard to set down the tray and then dismissed him. That's all for now. You're free to go. Here you go, sir, Ishida said, sliding the tray and bank card towards Cain. This is the finest set of mid-tier poke block crafting tools we have in stock. It's valued at 1.2 million poke dollars, but with your 5% discount, the total comes to 1.14 million. And here's your card, with 2.46 million still left in it. Cain took a quick glance at the tools and nodded to himself. He could tell just by looking that Ishida wasn't lying. The workmanship was top-notch among the mid-tier tools. With a flick of his wrist, Cain stored the tools and the card in his storage belt, all under the cover of his hooded black robe. And without so much as a glance back, he left the VIP room. As Cain disappeared from sight, the smile faded from Ishida's face. He furrowed his brow, deep in thought. Should I have someone follow him? The appraiser asked tentatively, breaking the silence. They were, after all, operating in the black market as members of Team Rocket. It was not uncommon for them to take such measures. But they also knew not to mess with those they couldn't afford to cross. Ishida hesitated for a moment before shaking his head. No, it's not worth the risk. I don't know anything about this man. If I send someone to follow him, I could easily be exposed and lose a customer who may be an intermediate breeder. The appraiser nodded in agreement, respect evident in his eyes. But keep an eye out for more geocentric cleansing milk in the black market, Ishida warned, his eyes flashing with a dangerous glint. If there is, I don't care who he is. Capture him on sight. Understood, sir, the appraiser replied, his tone resolute. 200 drops of geocentric cleansing milk weren't enough to risk offending an intermediate breeder like Cain, but if there was more, all bets were off. Ishida was a calculated risk-taker. He would kill and steal from those he deemed vulnerable, but for those whose strength he couldn't gauge or whose profits didn't justify the effort, he would back off. Cain's visit to the black market's largest item store had drawn attention, and many had seen him being led to the VIP room. As a result, some followed him when he left, but he was able to shake them all off with a few twists and turns. Eventually, Cain arrived at a rundown shop, hidden in the maze of the black market. The shelves were old and cobweb-covered, with moldy food on display. The air was thick with a rancid odor. Despite the shop's shoddy appearance, Cain pressed on. This was a place he was all too familiar with from his previous life. This was a human skin mask shop. Though it was in a state of disrepair, its reputation in the black market was still known. If it weren't for its shabby appearance, it would be crowded with customers, drawn in by the owner's craftsmanship. The owner of the shop was a peculiar character. With a laid-back attitude reminiscent of the legendary fisherman Jiangxia, he never did any advertising and relied solely on word of mouth from his loyal customers to keep his business afloat. As Cain approached, his trusty Murkrow flapped its wings, clearing away cobwebs that threatened to ensnare them. At the back of the shop, an unkempt old man with glasses sat behind the counter, completely absorbed in the human skin mask he was crafting. He paid no attention to Cain's arrival, as if the mask was the only thing that mattered in the world. Cain was familiar with the old man's indifference. He never looked up, no matter who came to his shop. He would work tirelessly on each mask, throwing it aside once it was finished, only to start on the next one. "Boss, I want to buy 5 masks, Cain said, covering his mouth with his hand to stifle a frown. The old man's body odor was overpowering, and it was clear he hadn't bathed in days. "The masks are on the floor," the shopkeeper grumbled, his hands never ceasing in their intricate work. "Find what you want." The card readers on the counter. 20,000 Pokedollars each. "I don't have time for idle chit-chat." Cain didn't mind the shopkeeper's gruff demeanor. He wandered through the piles of masks scattered across the ground, searching for just the right one. He picked out a handful of seemingly ordinary masks, but what set them apart was their unique style and appearance, a quality that no other shop in the black market could match. With a swift swipe of his card, Cain spent a cool 100,000 Pokedollars and bolted out of the shop, eager to escape the musty, moldy scent that permeated the air. Why did he have to come to this dingy alley to buy a mask? Murkrow thought as he perched on Cain's shoulder, struggling to catch his breath. The stench of the shop was suffocating, even for a tough Pokémon like him. "Easy there, buddy," Cain chuckled, flicking Murkrow's head playfully. "We need to get used to these conditions. You never know when you'll face an opponent with an even worse stink." Murkrow's eyes widened in disbelief. "Caw caw. You can't be serious." "Oh, I am," Cain replied with a mischievous grin. "Imagine facing a Gloom or a Grimer. That's a whole different level of stink." Murkrow shuddered at the thought. He couldn't even imagine facing such a foul-smelling opponent. Cain ducked into a secluded alley, away from prying eyes, where he retrieved a new mask from his Team Rocket belt. "Not bad," Cain said, admiring the mask. "Even though the boss is a slob, he knows how to make a clean mask. It's as crystal clear as a cicada's wing and just as thin. It's as good as the one I got from Umbra." Cain felt a thrill as he put on the mask, the cool material conforming perfectly to his skin. With a few adjustments, the mask blended seamlessly with his flesh, as if it were part of him. But as he basked in his disguise, 2 panicked footsteps echoed down the alley. Cain sprang into action, darting into a narrow crevice and placing a hand on his Pokeball. He was ready to summon Slowpoke at a moment's notice to escape, if the situation called for it. "What's going on?" Cain thought, frowning. He was sure he had shaken any tail he had picked up on his way here, to this deserted alley. He had come to change his mask and prepare for another shopping trip, but he never expected to run into 2 people in such a remote location. But as he listened to their conversation, Cain let out a sigh of relief. The footsteps stopped just a few feet away, and one of the 2 spoke, his voice sharp. "Big brother, why are we still here in the black market? Why aren't we leaving?" Smack! A loud slap echoed through the alley. A rough-voiced man scolded the other. "Are you brainless? We'll be caught if we leave now. We need to lay low for a while and avoid drawing attention. Then we can slip out unnoticed and sell this thing." The sharp-voiced man chuckled nervously. "Big brother, you're right. But is this egg worth anything? We went through so much trouble to steal it, but I've never seen it before. You're clueless, the rough-voiced man spat. If it wasn't worth anything, why would I risk stealing it? I heard them say it's a rare Pokémon egg from the Sinnoh region. Of course you wouldn't know about it. Cain's heart raced as he listened to their conversation. A Pokémon from the Sinnoh region being sold here? It must have been a Pokémon hunter, but unexpectedly, these two seemed to have stolen it. Big brother, how much is this egg worth? The sharp-voiced man asked eagerly. At least a few 100,000, the rough-voiced man replied. I heard them mention something about a scorpion with exceptional talent. Holy shit, we're rich! The sharp-voiced man exclaimed, his voice piercing the air. Watch your mouth, the rough-voiced man hissed. Do you want to get us killed? Chapter 68. Scorpion, huh? Cain murmured to himself, a smirk playing on his lips as he overheard the nearby conversation. That's just the street name they've given it. In the Sinnoh region, the only Pokémon they could be referring to were either Skorupi or Gligger, right? But wait, Gligger isn't exclusive to Sinnoh, Cain realized. It also roams the Johto region. So, it must be a Skorupi they're talking about. A flicker of excitement sparked within him as the realization hit. He knew about Skorupi all too well. He had caught one in his previous life, but its talent was not up to par and he eventually released it. However, Skorupi were remarkable Pokémon. Upon evolving into a Drapion, it would transform into a poison and dark type, making it a formidable force on the battlefield. Why, you ask? The dark attribute made up for the poison attribute's weakness, and the poison attribute made up for the dark attributes. With this combination, Drapion was only vulnerable to ground-type moves, and even then, it could shrug off most attacks from other types. And with the added bonus of being immune to psychic moves, Drapion could go toe-to-toe with any Pokémon. But that's not all. Drapion had high stats in speed, defense, and attack, making it a perfect combination of tank and attacker. And with its speed, it could outmaneuver its opponents, leaving them unable to kite it. Plus it's not just its attributes and species value that make Drapion so exceptional, Cain thought to himself as he continued to listen in on their conversation. Its abilities are top-notch too. If it's battle armor, it can act as the ultimate meat shield. If it's sniper, it can be trained to deliver devastating damage in close combat. Or if it has the hidden ability, Keen Eye, it can be a continuous damage dealer. In other words, Drapion can perfectly fulfill the role of tank, warrior, and continuous damage dealer, making it an all-round powerhouse, evoking memories of a popular game from Cain's past experiences on Earth. As he listened intently to the thieves' conversation and learned more about the stolen Skorupi egg, he surmised that either the owner of the egg was unaware of its theft or the egg had a questionable origin and the owner couldn't speak up. Cain was convinced that the Pokémon egg was of illicit origin. After all, if it had been obtained legally, it could have fetched a higher price in the Sinnoh region, because most people in the Kanto region were unaware of its value. This meant that the Pokémon's talent was truly exceptional. Otherwise, the owner wouldn't have gone to such lengths to sell it in the Kanto region, where they were likely to receive a lower price. Cain also suspected that the real owner had a significant amount of influence in the Sinnoh region, which is why the second owner was too afraid to appear in front of them. The thought of having a Pokémon with such outstanding attributes and aptitude filled Cain with excitement. He couldn't help but feel moved by the opportunity that had fallen into his lap. As Cain continued to listen in on the two thieves' conversation, he noticed that it had shifted from Pokémon to women. Bored with the topic, Cain peered out to see that the thieves had their backs to him, keeping watch over the situation outside. It made sense, given that they had sought refuge in a dead-end alley to ensure their safety. But what they didn't know was that there was a gap in the depths of the alley, and Cain was hiding within it. Cain couldn't be sure if the two thieves had Pokémon or if they were simply ordinary black market gangsters, but he was ready to act either way. He placed his hand on Slowpoke's Pokeball at his waist and signaled to Murkrow and Ghastly to be on standby. The black market was known for its lawlessness, with violence and death being commonplace. As long as one wasn't caught, they could get away with anything. It was a place where the line between criminal and honest folk was blurred, and it was impossible to keep the vicious individuals in check. Cain was part of the notorious Team Rocket, and he knew all too well that as long as they appeared to be above board, they could operate in the shadows as they pleased. The thieves were in high spirits, discussing how they would spend the money they were about to get, their guards down. This was Cain's chance. Ghastly, sneak over and use hypnosis. Slowpoke, use confusion to control them. Murkrow, use wing attack to take them out. Cain commanded, releasing Slowpoke from its Pokeball and sending it into action. Slowpoke was quick to act using confusion to control the thieves' mouths and hands, rendering them powerless. The brawny man, who had just realized what was happening, tried to shout for help but found that he couldn't move his mouth. His hand instinctively tried to reach for the Pokeball at his waist, but he was taken aback by the sudden appearance of a Ghastly. The Ghost-type Pokemon didn't waste a moment, using its hypnosis to put the two thieves under its spell. Meanwhile, Murkrow struck with lightning-fast speed, its wings glowing with white light as it sent the two men flying with a muffled thud. Their fragile human bodies were no match for the power of Pokemon, and the intense pain sent them into unconsciousness. Slowpoke, who had been keeping a close eye on the situation, caught the incubator containing the Pokemon egg as it slipped from their hands. Cain, expressionless, retrieved his dagger from his Team Rocket belt, the same one he had used on the trial island. Just as the saying goes, the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Cain wiped his bloody dagger on their clothes after sending them to the Yellow Springs. The thieves each had 2 Pokeballs, but they were not given the opportunity to release their Pokemon before being killed by Cain. It was to prevent such situations that Cain had Ghastly hide in his shadow, ready to swiftly respond to any sudden assaults. For additional security, Ghastly had also learned Protect, as Cain understood the vulnerability of humans when confronting Pokemon. Chapter 69. With a flick of his wrist, Cain broke the buttons on their Pokeballs to prevent the Pokemon inside from escaping. The AI system scan revealed the Pokemon in their possession: a level 25 Orange Aptitude Arbok, a level 24 Orange Aptitude Fiero, a level 22 Orange Aptitude Raticate, and a level 18 Yellow Aptitude Zubat. Cain was surprised to see a Yellow Aptitude Pokemon among them. Though it was only level 18, its value alone exceeded that of the other 3 combined. With a grin on his face, Cain shrunk the Pokeballs and placed them in his pocket. Though these Pokemon were average in strength and aptitude, they were still worth a pretty penny on the black market. As a former Pokemon hunter, he knew the value of these creatures all too well. He then collected all the money and valuables from the 2, counting his loot with a satisfied smirk. 100,000 Pokedollars, not a bad haul for a day's work. The life of a thief was certainly lucrative, but it was also dangerous. Finally, Cain's gaze landed on the floating egg. He approached it, taking the incubator in his hand, and the egg's data appeared before him.
Pokémon, Skorupi, egg form, light blue.
Gender: male. Level 1. Type: poison plus bug. Ability: unknown. Held items: none. Egg moves: Screech, Agility, Poison Tail, Pursuit. Basic moves: Bite, Poison Sting, Leer. Taunt moves: none. Technical machines: TMs none. Lo and behold, it was a Skorupi egg. Yet, this Skorupi was beyond what he had expected, possessing an aptitude that shone like the sky on a crisp winter's day, a blue aptitude, to be precise. Though its hue was light, it was a far cry from the verdant shade of green. Cain's heart was already beating like a taiko drum at the mere sight of Skorupi, but the discovery of its high aptitude made him feel like he had struck gold. Its hereditary prowess was also a force to be reckoned with, boasting not 1, not 2, but 4 egg moves. If he could nurture it to become a Drapion, it would be the ace up his sleeve. Despite being in the dark about Skorupi's ability, each of its 3 abilities were top-notch, with distinct paths for growth. Thus, he resolved to pour all his effort into raising this Skorupi. To top it off, a Pokemon that had been nurtured from birth shared a special bond with its trainer. The first person it laid eyes on after hatching would be regarded as a parental figure. Who would have guessed that he could stumble upon such an exceptional Pokemon just by swapping out his mask at a random spot? This marked the 3rd Pokemon egg that Cain had procured. The first egg he got was that of a Beedrill, which he sold to Umbra. The second was a Larvitar, a pseudo-legendary Pokemon, but sadly it could not be hatched. Now, the 3rd egg contained a Skorupi with a light blue aptitude. It seemed that fate was smiling upon Cain, granting him nothing but the finest Pokemon eggs. Though the Larvitar egg may have been the most valuable, this Skorupi egg was the first that he would personally nurture from hatchling to full-fledged warrior. Gazing at the data shimmering on the incubator's interface, Cain observed that its incubation period would last a mere 3 days. In just a short while, the egg would crack open, and a fresh-faced Skorupi would make its debut in the world. And when that momentous event finally arrived, Cain would need to prepare a proper meal for his newborn. Nourishing the creature with the most fitting Pokeblock would be a breeze with the AI system's help. No need for Cain to fret over finding the perfect recipe. The system would calculate and concoct the ideal blend. But there was a caveat. Newborn Pokemon could not stomach Pokeblocks immediately. They were too young and fragile to digest such complex fare. Instead, they required supplementary food. Thus, Cain hatched a new plan. He resolved to head straight to the black market's Pokemon sales area and acquire a Miltank, whose milk brimmed with nutritious energy. For infants, nothing beat the creamy richness of Miltank milk. And the higher the Miltank's aptitude, the more nourishing it was. True, Miltank milk could be purchased directly, but the milk that had been stored for a prolonged period contained artificial preservatives, and thus couldn't reach peak nutritional value. For optimal nutritional value, it was best to obtain a Miltank outright. Cain had originally intended to purchase one after discovering a way to hatch the rare larvitar egg. That way, he could provide the growing larvitar with the exceptional milk and give it an edge in its early stages. A head start, if you will. Alas, it seemed Cain's plan to buy a Miltank had to be hastened. Resolute in his decision, Cain wasted no time. He instructed Ghastly to take the incubator and conceal itself in his shadow, which had become a veritable storeroom. Besides the newly acquired Skorupi egg, there was also the precious larvitar egg. Slowpoke returned to its pokeball, and Murkrow remained perched on Cain's shoulder, a loyal sentinel. Clad in a fresh skin mask he'd just procured, he retrieved another black robe from his storage belt and draped it over his form. Then, he slipped away from the secluded alley. His presence unremarkable. Cain now possessed 6 exquisite skin masks, each capable of facilitating a different persona. He had a purpose for each identity, too. The skin mask Umbra had gifted him was Cain's Pokémon Association alias, the most crucial of his disguises, and one that must remain shrouded in secrecy. The human skin mask he donned was intended for his other occupation, Pokémon Hunter. In his previous life, Cain had earned his first fortune as a Pokémon Hunter, granting him the means to nurture his own Pokémon. Though there was an element of luck involved, in this life he possessed a higher starting point. Chapter 70. Cain was a master of the dark and twisted maze of the black market, intimately familiar with the wares offered in each of its alleys. With a confident step, he strode towards the Pokémon sales area, a place that held fond memories for the former Pokémon hunter, who had earned a reputation for his skills in capturing the elusive creatures. The Pokémon sales area was a cacophony of noise and color, a swirl of costumes and characters, all eager to get a glimpse of the rare Pokémon displayed in iron cages before each shop. Despite their listless appearance, the creatures within were the talk of the town, their strengths and weaknesses analyzed and discussed by onlookers. At the entrance of a few establishments, one could find the 3 starter Pokémon, their lack of vitality offset by the sheer draw of their rarity. These were the larger shops, stocked with an even greater variety of Pokémon, from common to the highly sought-after pseudo-legendary. Temptation lurked at every turn, with girls in revealing clothing beckoning visitors inside with seductive gestures, giving the illusion of a seedy underbelly to the market. But Cain was immune to their advances, ignoring the calls of those who tried to lure him inside. For all the beauty of the Pokémon on offer, Cain knew the truth. These creatures had lost the feral instincts that made them truly valuable. They had been trained and tamed, within an inch of their lives, rendering them useless to those who sought to capture the wild spirit of these magnificent beasts. Cain was on a mission to find a Miltank, a support Pokémon for sure, but he wasn't about to settle for just any old thing. No, if he found the right candidate, he would nurture and train it. If not, he would be forced to hit up one of the shops that sold Pokémon as mere milk-producing tools. His journey led him to a hidden shop deep in the bowels of the black market. Even the cages out front exuded an air of danger, the metal thicker, the Pokémon inside glaring with unbridled hatred, their feral nature enough to send shivers down the spine of even the bravest souls. This was the only shop in Saffron City's black market that sold Pokémon in their raw, untamed state, a haven for those who sought the ultimate strength of these magnificent creatures. Unlike other shops, there were no sexy assistants or flirty salesgirls luring in customers. Only a foreboding black iron door marked the entrance, beckoning Cain to push it open with a grating screech. Inside, the shop was bare bones, devoid of any fancy accoutrements or gaudy lights. Flickering candles cast a dim, eerie glow over the ranks of cages lining the aisle, each one holding a wild and unbroken Pokémon. Cain strode past the feral cries and bestial roars of the caged creatures, his eyes locked on the back of the shop, where the counter lay. After 2 long minutes, he finally arrived, where a woman in a black leather jacket sat, calmly applying her makeup, oblivious to the pandemonium around her. Upon noticing Cain, the woman behind the counter abandoned her lipstick, using a dainty finger to wipe away any smudges before returning it to her purse. With a beguiling smile, she greeted him in a voice that oozed seduction, ripe as a cherry. "Oh, a new customer," she purred, raising her delicate eyebrows and flashing a coy dimple. Propping her chin on her slender hand, she added, "Did you find your way here by mistake, or was it a recommendation?" Before Cain could respond, her nose twitched, detecting the telltale scent of blood. The woman's expression shifted from sultry to surprise. "Blood?" she inquired. "So you didn't just wander in here. Do you know the rules of this shop?" "I do," Cain replied, voice hoarse and ambiguous, giving nothing away about his age. Although others might not have recognized her, Cain knew full well that this seemingly fragile woman was actually the manager of this Hunters Guild's Pokémon shop, the most powerful Pokémon hunting organization in all of Kanto. Every single creature within those cages was hunted down by members of the guild, left untrained and untamed, as the guild believed that wild Pokémon were the most valuable of all. This woman before him, despite her appearance, was a fully registered Pokémon hunter in the guild, her strength comparable to that of a quasi-elite. Cain knew better than to underestimate her. Cain was well aware of the woman's strict rules. Once a Pokémon was purchased, it couldn't be returned. And no matter what they saw inside the shop, they couldn't speak a word of it once they left. If they were caught breaking these rules, they'd be banned from all Hunters Guild Pokémon shops in the region, and in severe cases, hunted down. Many of the creatures on display had been acquired by the guild through questionable means, snatched from protected areas designated by the association, or obtained from the seedy underworld of dark organizations. If the Pokémon's origins were discovered by the association or other criminal organizations prior to being sold, it would have a huge impact on the sale price. But make no mistake, the Pokémon in this shop were small potatoes. The rarest of rare creatures were reserved for grand auctions, where all of the Hunters Guild's customers and influential figures from dark organizations were in attendance. The guild's strength was unparalleled in the Kanto region, with the exception of the association and Team Rocket. And the ties between the Hunters Guild and Team Rocket ran deep, with the former providing Pokémon for trialists like Cain, free of charge. Thus, the Pokémon they encountered were always wild and untamed, a testament to the inseparable bond between the two organizations. The specifics of their relationship, however, remained a mystery. Chapter 71. As Cain proclaimed his knowledge of the rules, the leather-clad woman fell silent. With a graceful motion, she retrieved a bottle of nail polish from its hiding place beneath the counter and unfurled it before Cain's stoic gaze. Methodically, she brushed the color onto her nails, the sound of the bristles against the glass a soft lullaby in the still air. Boredom crept over her as she gazed upon Cain's unchanging demeanor. Her lips curled in a smirk as she spoke. "It's dreadfully dull in here. Do tell, what sort of Pokémon are you searching for? Don't even think about asking for a pseudo-legendary. We don't have one here, and even if we did, your pockets wouldn't run deep enough to acquire it." There was no denying that Cain was not wealthy. As a seasoned Pokémon hunter, he had to possess a keen eye for value. Otherwise, how could he assess the worth of the Pokémon he sought to capture? Murkrow perched on Cain's shoulder caught her eye, giving her a rough estimate of his strength. The bird's potential was not lacking, clearly well trained, but its overall might was somewhat limited, suggesting that its level was not particularly high. She deduced that Cain's own strength was limited, hidden or not. He couldn't possibly possess the power to obtain a pseudo-legendary Pokémon. But Cain was not there to purchase a pseudo-legendary. These powerful creatures took far too long to train, and by the time they matured, Cain's carefully nurtured Pokémon may no longer be able to keep up. "I want to buy a Miltank," Cain stated plainly, without any unnecessary words. The leather-clad woman's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Wild Miltanks are a rare find. Most are claimed by the affluent family in Goldenrod City. And even if you do find one, there's not much difference between a wild one and a captured one, is there? She questioned, her gaze fixed on Cain. "You don't have it?" Cain repeated, his voice laced with skepticism. She batted her lashes at him in a playful yet annoyed manner. "Humph, what a lack of manners." "Follow me," she purred, her tone dripping with sarcasm. With a flick of her wrist, she retrieved a jangling bunch of keys from the counter's drawer and sashayed deeper into the store, her hips swaying in a hypnotic rhythm beneath her leather jacket. Cain's gaze couldn't help but linger on the curves of her body, but he knew better than to let his mind wander. This woman was not just any rose, but a thorny beauty and a quasi-elite expert to boot. He trailed behind her, his gaze firmly fixed on the ground. But the leather-clad woman was aware of Cain's presence, even as she walked ahead. After a quick glance over her shoulder, she realized that Cain's gaze was no longer on her. A small smile played at the corners of her lips as she faced forward again. Normally, any man would ogle her with burning desire, but this time was different. The man behind her was intriguing. Soon, they arrived at a dull, gray iron plate. The leather-clad woman meticulously combed through her keys until she found the right one. With a delicate twist, the heavy plate slowly creaked open. "Here you go," she purred, gesturing to the Miltank inside. "Take a look, see if anything catches your eye. Each cage has a price tag. Let me know if you find anything you like." With a hum and a twirl of the keys between her slender fingers, she spun on her heel and sauntered away, her only worry being the weight of the keys would snap her delicate nails. Cain gazed after the leather-clad woman until she disappeared completely from view, finally letting out a sigh of relief. He shifted his focus to the iron cage in front of him, and the Pokémon within. The small, cramped room housed 5 such cages, each one holding a Miltank that Cain sought. Activating the AI system scanning function, Cain scanned each of the 5 Pokémon. In an instant, the data appeared before him, and he was deep in thought as he studied the results. The 5 Miltanks were above average in aptitude, and their levels fell within Cain's acceptable range. From their appearance, 4 of the Miltanks appeared to be in good spirits, their eyes filled with a mix of hatred and fear as they glared at Cain. The 5th Miltank, older in appearance, had a more gentle disposition, not attacking its cage or mooing in fury. However, after being captured and imprisoned for an unknown amount of time, the Miltank still harbored a trace of animosity towards humans. After eliminating 2 of the Miltanks, one older and one with the highest level, 3 remained. The highest level Miltank was a level 30 specimen, its hatred towards Cain palpable. It was obvious that this Pokémon had suffered a major trauma or setback during its capture, causing its enmity towards humans to reach its peak. This type of Pokémon was often extremely difficult, if not impossible, to tame, and Cain knew better than to waste his time on it. There was also another factor to consider. Pokémon with levels too high had already established their battle style, making it difficult to change. The 3 remaining Miltanks, all light green in aptitude, had levels around 20, making them quite desirable. One of them possessed the Scrappy ability, allowing it to excel against Ghost-type Pokémon with its normal and Fighting-type moves. However, Cain eliminated this Miltank from his options as well. Despite the battle prowess of the Scrappy ability, Cain's team was already packed with attacking power. Murkrow and the soon-to-hatch Skorupi were both strong damage dealers, so they didn't require the Miltank's damage output. As he was cultivating the Miltank as a support Pokémon, Cain hoped that after nurturing it, the Miltank would possess enough survivability to help his team recover during battles. That left him with 2 Miltanks, both possessing the Thick Fat ability. This ability reduced the damage taken from fire and ice-type moves by 50%, greatly increasing the Pokémon's survivability. Pokémon, Miltank, light green, gender, female, level, 21, type, normal, ability, thick fat, held items, none, egg moves, curse, helping hand, basic moves, tackle, growl, defense curl, stomp, milk drink, bide, rollout, taunt moves, shock wave, thunder punch, technical machines, TMs none. Pokémon, Miltank, light green, gender, female, level, 20, type, normal, ability, thick fat, held items, none, egg moves, present, endure, basic moves, tackle, growl, defense curl, stomp, milk drink, bide, rollout, taunt moves, helping hand, heal bell, block, technical machines, TMs none. The 2 Miltanks were quite distinct from each other. The first Miltank was inclined towards battle, with electric moves being its strong suit. The second Miltank was more supportive, with both its inherited and taught moves geared towards support. When considering the role Miltank would play in Cain's future team, the choice was clear. The second Miltank, with its support moves, was the better option and the one that Cain was more satisfied with. Chapter 72. Cain's gaze fixed on the label of the cage, holding the one that had caught his eye. With a thrill, he read the details. Number, 85,679. Pokémon, Miltank. Aptitude, Advanced. Price, 500,000 Pokédollars. The price was steep, but it was still well within his budget, especially when he considered that the highest level Miltank was priced at 600,000 Pokédollars. Moreover, a Skorupi was due to be born soon, and the team needed all the strength they could muster. Without hesitation, Cain pressed the red button at the entrance to the room and waited patiently with his arms crossed. It didn't take long for the woman in the black leather jacket to swagger in, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "You've chosen so quickly. Which one do you want?" Her voice was smooth and sly, like a Zangus poised to pounce. "I'll take this one," Cain replied, pointing to the Miltank that had caught his eye. He fished out the black bank card that he had just obtained and handed it to the woman. The woman's surprise was palpable, as she took the anonymous bank card from Cain's hand. "Not bad. You have good taste." She deftly produced a card reader from her storage equipment, expertly entering the price. The sound of the swipe was almost melodic, as 500,000 Pokédollars were deducted from Cain's account. With a flick of her wrist, she produced the most ordinary of Pokeballs. A burst of red light engulfed the Miltank that Cain had chosen, sealing it inside. As she handed the Pokeball and bank card to Cain, Her voice, like honey, whispered in his ear. This is yours. Do come back, won't you? Remember me, it's Rose. Oh. Her "oh" stretched out like taffy, deliberately drawing his attention. Cain's mouth twitched, a headache looming. He knew the danger of getting too close to Rose, whose name was fitting for a woman covered in thorns. Her beauty was a snare, a trap that only the foolish would fall into, her true identity obscured by layers of carefully constructed disguise. Ignoring her, he took the bank card and pokeball from her. After a moment's hesitation, he spoke up. I want to register as a member of the Hunters Guild and take on some missions. The smile on Rose's face faded, replaced by a cold stare. It was as if she was seeing him for the first time, evaluating him from head to toe. A hunter? She asked, voice frosty. The Hunters Guild was an underground organization, its members not always united. Most only registered and completed missions, free from any real obligations. The guild's members were scattered throughout the region, meeting at various locations. This shop in Saffron City not only sold wild Pokémon but also served as a hub for hunters to connect and receive missions. In his previous life, Cain's first brush with the Pokémon hunter profession was here. But the manager was not Rose back then. Registration as a hunter wasn't mandatory. One could still sell their Pokémon to the guild without it. But once registered, they could embark on missions issued by the guild and earn more. Becoming a Pokémon hunter was a quick way to make money, requiring only strength and a keen eye for Pokémon. And even though he was not short on funds, Cain knew better than to be unprepared for what lay ahead. Preparation was key. Silently nodding his head, he remained quiet as Rose rolled her eyes and flirted with him, applying her lipstick with an unhappy air. I thought you were a virgin, she sighed, but you're just a hunter. How dull. Leading him deeper into the shop, they walked in silence for what felt like an eternity. Finally, a huge metal door creaked open, revealing a spacious hall before them. This hall was a far cry from the dingy Pokémon shop from before. The opulent decorations and diverse crowd were a feast for the eyes, each individual sporting a medal pinned to their chest. Cain observed the variety of medals. Some had 3 stars, some had 1, and a select few boasted a sun emblem. Fearful glances darted their way, revealing the sun-wearing members as the strongest in the hall. Teleportation points dotted the area, people materializing out of thin air at each one. Some dashed to the portals and vanished without a word. These were the official means of transportation for registered members of the Hunters Guild. Fixed points created using the power of Pokémon. But only after completing a certain mission could one access the specific locations of these teleportation points. As a newly registered hunter, Cain was limited to only the most basic, their distance from the hall not exceeding 3,000 meters. The medals displayed on each person's chest denoted their level in the Hunters Guild. 1 star for the lowest, 2 for the next level up, and a rare 7 for the elite. Only 7-star hunters held the highest rank in the guild, able to tackle the most challenging missions. But those with the sun symbol on their chests were a different story entirely. They were internal members of the Hunters Guild, enjoying privileges far beyond that of a star hunter. Their status ranked second only to the branch president, and they were known as the guild's honorary elders. Chapter 73. However, unlike the star hunters, who only had to capture and sell Pokémon, these honorary elders had obligations to fulfill while enjoying their elite status. The Hunters Guild had the power to conscript them into service, making them the guild's direct members. Yet, the star hunters jeered at them behind their backs, calling them lackeys, as if the sun medal were a mark of servitude and earning them the nickname Sun Dogs from jealous star hunters. Despite their subservient nickname, the Sun Dogs were all incredibly strong. Only those who were at least quasi-elite in strength could earn the sun medal. When Rose and Cain entered the hall, they caught the attention of a few people, but soon everyone returned to their own business. One of the sun medal-wearing elders, who had been sitting on a sofa feigning disinterest, lit up when he saw Rose walk in. He put on a sunny smile and hurried over. Rose, what brings you here? Rose scowled at the man who had sidled up to her. She looked nothing like the charming storekeeper. Her demeanor was frosty and aloof. What's it to you that I'm here? Logan, why do you always show up? Logan, the man with the sun medal, didn't take offense at Rose's sarcasm. Instead, he grinned and said, "Oh, I heard you got transferred here to manage the store, so I requested to be transferred here too, with the guild of course." Rose had been hounded by this guy for days. Logan's identity wasn't simple, yet he was relentlessly pursuing her. She'd even fled to the black market in Saffron City to manage a dingy store, but still he'd followed her here. It was all a bit much for Rose to handle. She couldn't bear another moment of his persistent advances. Ignoring his sunny grin, Rose headed straight for the front desk, with Cain trailing behind her in silence. Logan wasn't perturbed by Rose's snub. He knew her character all too well. He continued to pester her, hoping to strike up a conversation. "Assist him with the registration formalities," Rose instructed the staff at the guild's window, without a glance in Logan's direction. Logan only noticed Cain's presence at that moment. His smile faded, replaced with a frown as he asked, "Who's this guy?" Rose ignored him, taking out her mirror to reapply her lipstick. Cain also disregarded Logan, addressing the staff instead. "Could you help me register as a hunter?" Logan's frustration boiled over when he realized that both of them weren't paying attention to him. He'd spent so long chasing Rose, yet he was always ignored. But now this new bee was ignoring him too? It was too much to bear. "Who are you?" Logan's voice grew frosty. Cain didn't bat an eye. In this situation, silence was the best response. The calamity that Rose had brought upon him left Cain feeling helpless. All he wanted to do was register as a hunter, but now he was dealing with a horn dog's irrational behavior. But Cain didn't worry too much. This was the Hunters Guild's mission hall, and no one could get violent here. Even Logan, as an honorary elder of the guild, couldn't break the rules. Besides, once he left the hall, Logan wouldn't be able to find him. Not with Slowpoke's teleport. And most importantly, Cain still wore a human skin mask. "Logan, stop it. You're making a scene and tarnishing the guild's reputation," Rose admonished. She had noticed that people were starting to watch them. If Logan kept bullying Cain like this, it would cause a lot of gossip and bring shame to the guild. Logan also realized that he was acting inappropriately. Cain was just a newbie and didn't deserve to be his punching bag. "What are you all staring at? Mind your own business," Logan yelled at the onlookers, who quickly averted their gaze. Though Logan simmered with anger, he didn't do anything else to Cain. Instead, he glared at him and growled, "I'll remember you, kid." With that, he returned to his sofa and closed his eyes to calm himself. Silence hung in the air for a few moments before the person in charge at the window tentatively asked, Excuse me, are you going to register as a Pokémon hunter?" He'd known Logan and Rose's identities, so he didn't dare speak up when Logan was angry. Only now, when Logan had left, did he dare to speak up. Once Cain nodded, the staff member let out a sigh of relief. He also didn't want to provoke someone who had the courage to ignore Logan. Registered hunters in the guild didn't have many benefits until they reached a high enough star level. But once they did, the benefits were enormous. High-star missions offered generous rewards, and there was a discount when purchasing Pokémon. "What code name do you want to use?" the staff member asked, following procedure. Hunters never used their real names. After all, being a Pokémon hunter wasn't an esteemed profession, and it was something the association vehemently opposed. Many hunters had aliases, making missions easier. Cain thought for a moment before responding, "Joker." It was his hunter code name in his past life. He didn't see the need to come up with a new one after being reborn. To the staff member, Cain's chosen code name was just another drop in the bucket. With so many people registering every day, he'd seen it all. To him, Cain's name was normal. The staff member typed the name into the computer, clicked a few buttons with his mouse, and then hit enter. A card slid out of the machine and into his hand. "This is your hunter card. It tracks the missions you complete, your success rate, and stores your guild points. You'll need to use this card every time you accept a mission," he explained, holding out a jade green card to Cain. Cain took the card, which was still warm from the printer. He was now a registered Pokémon hunter with a star level of 0. "Since you're all set, I'm out," Rose said, turning away without looking up. "By the way, keep an eye on Logan. He's not someone to underestimate," she warned Cain in a low voice as she left. Cain and Rose were strangers. While it was her fault that the earlier incident occurred, reminding Cain was the most she could do. Chapter 74. Cain's boots echoed through the grand hall of the Hunters Guild as he strode towards the row of glittering computer terminals. This was the nerve center of the guild, where hunters came to accept the bountiful missions. Each terminal was manned by a dedicated hunter, their fingers flying over the keyboard as they accepted their next challenge. Luck was on Cain's side, for as he approached, a hunter had just swiped their identity card and disappeared without a backward glance, leaving a computer waiting for Cain to claim. He sank into the plush chair and slid his own identity card through the reader, watching as the computer screen came to life. Hunter. Joker. Points. 0. Star rating. 0. Mission completion rate. None. Note: you're just a rookie. What are you waiting for? Go hunt Pokémon. Cain was momentarily speechless. taken aback by the playful and light-hearted tone of the guild. They always like to do things their own way. With a click of the mouse, he opened the mission panel, only to be faced with tens of thousands of zero-star missions. As a newly registered hunter, Cain's star rating was at the bottom of the ladder, meaning he could only accept the simplest of missions. If he wanted to tackle the high-star missions, he would need to increase his hunter points. These points were determined by the value of the Pokémon he captured, with each successful mission earning him a corresponding amount. For example, capturing a Pokémon worth 100,000 Pokédollars would earn Cain 100,000 hunter points, propelling him towards a 1-star rating. And from there, the sky was the limit, with 2-star corresponding to 500,000 points, 3-star to 1,500,000 points, and 4-star a dizzying 5 million points. As the stars rose higher, so did the challenge of reaching for the next one. But with each step upwards, the reward for each mission grew greater, like a glittering beacon calling out to hunters everywhere. Points in the Hunters Guild were as good as Pokédollars, and after each successful mission, a hunter would not only receive a generous sum of currency but also a corresponding number of points. These could be traded directly for Pokémon or items of equal value within the guild. And this was exactly why Cain had registered to become a Pokémon hunter. The Hunters Guild was one of the most profitable organizations in the world, second only to the Pokémon Association and the notorious Team Rocket. The sheer volume of Pokémon captured by hunters each year was enough to make the guild a fortune. But being a successful hunter wasn't just about strength and skill. A hunter's luck played a crucial role too, as evidenced by the star classification system. With a stroke of luck, a hunter could level up their status overnight. Cain scanned the mission list, his eyes taking in the seemingly endless options. But he didn't forget his own personal mission, the one that had brought him out of Purgatory Island in the first place. And so, he set his sights on the Pokémon that he might encounter along the way. In the end, Cain chose one of the more difficult zero-star missions. The task was simple. Capture a Nidoran with intermediate or above aptitude. The higher the aptitude, the higher the reward. And Cain knew just where to find these creatures, for he remembered a few Nidoran clans in the wilderness near Goldenrod City. With a little patience and a keen eye, he was sure to find a Nidoran with a suitable aptitude. It was a chance to earn some extra money while completing his own personal mission. As the level of a Pokémon rose, so too did their demands for resources. Cain had more than 1 million Pokédollars to his name, but even that was just a drop in the ocean when it came to training a Pokémon to greatness. With a flick of his wrist, Cain accepted the mission, watching as it vanished from the mission list and a new entry appeared under his identity information. Mission: Capture Nidoran, in progress. He rose from the computer with a graceful motion, returning his card to its proper place. The hunters waiting behind him clamored to take his place, eager to start their own missions. Cain tugged the hood of his cloak over his head, hiding his features from view. He smoothed out the fabric of his clothes and made his way towards the teleportation circle in the hall. But as he turned to leave, he felt a gaze upon him, a scrutiny that he knew all too well. Logan, who had been resting on a sofa, had opened his eyes and was watching Cain from the corner of his eye. With a smirk, Cain walked straight to one of the 3 teleportation circles designated for zero-star hunters. He swiped his identity card on the reader, and the circle sprang to life with a faint glow. As Cain vanished from the hall of the Hunters Guild, Logan rose to his feet, a cold smile spreading across his face. He was Rose's #1 suitor, but his advances had always been ignored. Now, Cain's disregard had given him an outlet for his pent-up anger. He needed a cruel slaughter to vent his frustrations, and Cain was the perfect target. The elders of the Hunters Guild, who knew Logan all too well, cast worried glances for Cain. The Murkrow perched on his shoulder spoke volumes about his lack of strength, making it clear that he would be no match for Logan, a quasi-elite level powerhouse. Hunters had their own unique methods of tracking, and so the black robe Cain wore held no significance to Logan. He didn't need to rely on appearances to find his prey. Logan cast a sinister smile as he strode towards the same teleportation circle. He swiped his golden identity card, the symbol of his status, on the reader, and was transported to the same destination as Cain. The Hunters Guild's teleportation circles were spread across different forests, with the distance increasing based on the hunter's rank. As a zero-star hunter, Cain was teleported to a small forest outside of Saffron City. The portals changed locations periodically to avoid being tracked by the association, but if used in a relatively short time frame, hunters were usually sent to the same location. And so, Logan waited for Cain to leave before entering the teleportation circle himself. "Come forth, Slowpoke." Cain stepped out of a large tree hole, releasing Slowpoke from its pokeball. Just then, another flash of white light illuminated the area as a tall figure emerged from the same tree hole. "We meet again." Logan was taken aback to see Cain still there, and a sneer twisted his lips. Slowpoke, use teleport. Cain grinned, and Slowpoke responded, its psychic energy activating, enveloping Cain's body in a shimmering aura. Damn it! Come out, Houndoom. Use flamethrower. Logan's expression turned ferocious as he threw a pokeball and barked out the command. I'll remember you, Logan. Cain's voice was rough and cold as he echoed Logan's words back to him. Chapter 75. Logan cut a striking figure as a quasi-elite, and his Houndoom radiated raw, animalistic strength. Just as Slowpoke summoned its energy to teleport, a blast of searing flame burst from Houndoom's jaws, zeroing in on Cain and his companion. Murkrow, Ghastly, use Protect. Cain commanded, and his faithful Pokémon sprang into action, materializing in front of him with lightning speed and thwarting the inferno with their shields. Houndoom proved to be a formidable foe, as the shields crumbled under the intense heat in mere moments. But it was enough time. Slowpoke had already activated Teleport, whisking Cain and his companions away from the forest just as Houndoom's flames slammed into the trees behind them with an earth-shaking boom, igniting a blazing inferno that reduced the forest to ashes. Logan cursed in frustration as his target vanished before his eyes, leaving him to seethe with anger as he retreated from the burning forest, Houndoom in tow. The Saffron City police arrived soon after, led by the renowned Officer Jenny, as the city's sirens wailed in the distance. In a spacious room, a woman floated in mid-air, her long purple hair and red robes making her look like a sorceress. The room was filled with dolls, lending a whimsical air to the eerie scene. The woman's eyes snapped open, emitting a cyan light as she frowned in confusion. What is this feeling? She muttered. If one were to know her, they might have gasped in shock. Sabrina, the gym leader of Saffron City, one of the 3 senior executives of Team Rocket. Cain and his Pokémon found themselves transported to a secluded corner of the black market. It was a location that Cain had asked Slowpoke to mark, a precautionary measure for such an emergency. Well done, Slowpoke, Cain praised, patting the creature's back. You're becoming quite the master at utilizing teleport. Yadong. Slowpoke's cry echoed, its effortless teleport not draining too much energy. Suddenly, Slowpoke, who had been basking in contentment with its eyes closed, shot upright. Its relaxed body tensed and trembled, a change that Cain immediately picked up on. He had never seen Slowpoke so disturbed before, and it seemed as though it had encountered its natural enemy. What's wrong, Slowpoke? Cain asked in a low voice. Slowpoke couldn't answer, its trembling growing more intense. Murkrow fluttered its wings, attempting to take flight, but found that its body was beyond its control. Ghastly was affected the most, its purple gas rapidly dissipating as it struggled to return to the shadows but realized it couldn't. Was it this Slowpoke? How fun! A clear voice rang out, though its source was unseen. Who's there? Cain looked around, scanning the area, but found no one. A ghostly figure materialized in the air, a young woman with a serene smile floating before them. Her gaze was fixed upon Slowpoke, as if she were examining a new toy. Cain's pupils contracted, fear gripping him as a name echoed in his mind. Sabrina. She must have sensed Slowpoke's teleport fluctuations and followed its trail to this very spot. This explained Slowpoke's trembling, Murkrow's inability to fly, and Ghastly's rapid dissipation. Sabrina, the Psychic Queen, was a formidable talent, her power rivaling that of an elite Psychic-type Pokémon. Ignoring Cain's question, Sabrina drifted toward Slowpoke, looking down at it and asking with a playful lilt, "Little guy, do you want a new trainer?" "Yeah, dong." Slowpoke's body was still rigid with fear, but its stubborn eyes and the 2 syllables it spat out revealed its unwillingness. Sabrina's smile faded as she heard Slowpoke's voice, cyan light gathering in her hands. Her blood-red robes flowed, even though there was no wind. It was the first time Sabrina, who had always got what she wanted, felt such strong rejection. Yadong. Slowpoke's voice grew louder, its fear fading as it adjusted to Sabrina's aura and spoke with ease. Finally, Sabrina cast her gaze upon Cain, her voice cold as she asked, "You're its trainer?" Cain felt Sabrina's chill gaze upon him, like a sharp dagger pressing against his flesh, causing his hair to stand on end. "Miss Sabrina, Slowpoke is my companion," Cain declared resolutely. "You know me?" Sabrina was a well-known figure in Saffron City, but few could recognize her after years of seclusion in the gymnasium. Cain tore away his black cloak, revealing the Team Rocket uniform underneath and retrieving a black, cloud-shaped medal from his Team Rocket belt. Sabrina was only slightly surprised by the revelation of Cain's Team Rocket affiliation, but when he brandished the medal, a symbol of membership in the Shadow Unit, her expression betrayed a flicker of shock. "What is your connection to the Shadow Unit?" Sabrina asked, the frost in her voice thawing slightly. Chapter 76. Cain spoke with care, his words a delicate dance. I'm carrying out a mission for Mr. Umbra. Even in his former life, he lacked the ability to resist someone as formidable as Sabrina, and now, he was but a mere shadow of his former self. He showed her the respect she commanded, not from fear, but from a deep understanding of power. Sabrina was silent, but her eyes, once alight with a mischievous cyan glow, now flickered and dimmed. She was no longer amused. That Umbra guy, it seems like his last mission was a failure. He's relying on weak kids like you now. The longer he lives, the more he regresses, she mused, descending from the sky like a falling star. Sabrina cast a disdainful gaze upon Cain, her full lips curling into a sneer. How boring. It's hard to find a toy worth playing with, she pouted, her demeanor shifting from that of a powerful Team Rocket executive to a petulant child. She approached Cain, tilting her head as she sized him up. With a smile that was both sweet and sinister, she offered him a deal. How about this? I'll ask Slowpoke again. If it agrees to follow me, I'll compensate you. Sound good? Before Cain could respond, Sabrina made her decision. That's it, she declared, crouching down to address Slowpoke with a coaxing smile. Little guy, I'm giving you another chance. Follow me, and I'll make you stronger. Your current trainer can't unlock your full potential, but I can. How about it? Do you want to become even more powerful? Sabrina appeared like a sinister sister, lollipop in hand, ready to abduct a child. Her words, like poison on the tongue, made Cain's heart race with fear. But Slowpoke was uninterested, shaking its head in silence as blue light shone from its eyes. In response, cyan light flared in Sabrina's eyes as the two psychic users communicated telepathically. Cain could only guess at the conversation, but soon enough, Sabrina stood with a pout, jealousy flickering in her gaze as if her favorite toy had been taken. She muttered a string of curses under her breath and turned to leave, a disappointment evident in her step. As Sabrina walked away, Cain let out a sigh of relief. Umbra's name had proven useful, and Sabrina's relationship with him was clearly strong. Otherwise, Sabrina's temperamental personality would never have allowed her to give up so easily. Just as Cain relaxed, Sabrina spun around with a mischievous smile. Humph, it's not that simple, she said, cyan psychic energy crackling in her hand. Before Cain and Slowpoke could react, she struck Cain's chest with a powerful palm, sending a scorching energy surging through his body and sending him flying backwards to the ground. Slowpoke and Murkrow were frozen in place, unable to move a muscle, rendering them helpless. Ghastly, already weakened, stood no chance either. Sabrina clapped her hands in satisfaction, having used just enough psychic energy to render Cain immobile for half a day, a small release for her frustration. But what she didn't expect was the faint cyan energy wave that rippled across Cain's fallen form. It was a psychic wave, and Sabrina, an incredibly talented psychic, recognized it immediately. With a look of disbelief, Sabrina flew to Cain's side, rubbing her eyes to make sure she wasn't seeing things. But the wave was real, and Sabrina muttered in disbelief. He awakened just like that? Sabrina closed her eyes and fully activated her psychic energy. When she opened them again, she was stunned. What? What a lucky kid. His mental strength is 5 times that of an ordinary person, and it just so happens that he meets the requirements to become a psychic user. He was awakened by my slap. Sabrina was at a loss for words. She only meant to punish Cain, but instead, she had helped awaken his psychic ability. Though his talent was average, with hard work and training, he would be able to fend off Pokémon in the future. Psychics were a rare breed in the Pokémon world. Only a select few, one in hundreds of thousands, had the mental strength to awaken their psychic ability. Cain, with his 3 lives of experience, may have had a slight advantage in mental fortitude, but it would have been a monumental feat for him to awaken his psychic ability. Yet, under Sabrina's unintentional attack, a spark from the outside world ignited within him, and his psychic ability was awakened. From that moment on, Cain was a member of the Pokémon world with unique abilities, a member of a minority with a rare gift. The unwritten rule among psychics was to support each other whenever possible, for it was the only way to gain a foothold in the Pokémon world. This was a lesson learned from the past, where a nation of psychics once existed. Their arrogance caused a great war that swept across the world, and the nation was lost to history. In the wake of this tragedy, psychics chose to keep a low profile, and the elders taught their juniors to offer aid to other psychic users. Although Sabrina had a quirky personality, she adhered to those teachings, even though Cain wasn't particularly talented. Humph! Sabrina huffed, still a little angry. She tossed a simple training manual down and teleported away, afraid that she would add a few more puppets to her collection today. Chapter 77. Cain lay prone, his mind lost to time's grasp. When his eyes fluttered open, his skull felt ready to split. He clenched his teeth and, with Slowpoke and Murkrow's support, rose to his feet. His fingers dug into his temples, and his furrowed brows unknotted, allowing his eyes to open. Slowpoke and Murkrow, their anxiety palpable, gazed at him as he croaked, "Slowpoke, Murkrow, are you safe? And Ghastly? Where is he?" "Kiki," came Ghastly's fragile voice, wafting toward Cain on a faint breeze. His hazy body, once dense with purple, now appeared insubstantial, bobbing aimlessly. Of all his Pokémon, Ghastly had suffered the most. Although Sabrina hadn't focused her assault on him, the fallout of her overwhelming psychic energy nearly dissipated his body. Nevertheless, Ghastly was fine, albeit still weak. Cain's relief at Ghastly's condition gave way to renewed torment, as his headache flared once more. Slowpoke eyed him warily before extending a paw, laying it on Cain's throbbing temple. With a surge of blue psychic energy, it directed psychic energy into Cain's mind. An instant later, Cain's agony ebbed, replaced by a soothing coolness that traveled through his head. He struggled to keep himself from moaning in pleasure as he gazed at Slowpoke in astonishment, realizing for the first time that its psychic energy held the power to heal. The pain subsided, allowing Cain to rise to his feet slowly. He shook his head, muttering, "Sabrina's got some serious fire in her belly, doesn't she?" He yearned to hurl a vulgar insult, but the memory of Sabrina's sudden arrival stifled his words. Slowpoke pondered, mulling over something of great import. Cain spotted Slowpoke's peculiar behavior and queried, "What's the matter, Slowpoke?" In response, Slowpoke activated its telepathy, and a gentle voice echoed in Cain's head, "Master, have you awakened?" "Awakened? What do you mean?" Cain was befuddled. "Awakened? What awakening?" Just then, Murkrow arrived, holding a manual in its beak. Cain took the booklet out of Murkrow's mouth, revealing a slim volume titled Psychic Training Manual, Volume 1. Psychic Training Manual? Awakening? Did I awaken psychic powers after being struck by Sabrina? Cain didn't know how to process this revelation. Slowpoke, Murkrow, and Ghastly nodded in agreement with Cain's musings. When Cain had first roused, they were unable to move, but they sensed the presence of psychic energy within him. Despite its faintness, it was undoubtedly present. "But why don't I feel anything?" Cain wondered aloud. His Pokémon were sure he'd awakened psychic powers, yet he felt nothing. Slowpoke and the others were equally perplexed. Murkrow and Ghastly lacked psychic energy, rendering them mute on the subject. Though Slowpoke possessed psychic energy, he'd been born with it and knew little of awakened psychics. Suddenly, Cain recalled the book in his hand, likely the training manual Sabrina had left behind. The answer he sought was likely within its pages. Fortunately, the manual was brief and void of fluff. The opening page outlined how to harness psychic energy at the earliest stages. The easiest way to wield psychic energy was to channel it into an object, then manipulate its movement or shape. For fledgling psychic users, moving an object was the ideal way to test their power. Cain read through the first page of the manual, then gazed upon a fist-sized rock at his feet. He concentrated intently on the rock, straining to move it. His eyes bulged, his vision blurring as he labored, but the rock remained inert. "Perhaps it's too heavy?" Cain conjectured. Disbelieving, he swapped the rock for a pebble the size of his thumbnail, focusing once more. At last, a faint cyan psychic aura suffused the pebble, causing it to drift upward as Cain directed. A spark of amazement kindled within Cain, but it was fleeting. The concentrated will dissipated, and the pebble tumbled to the ground with a dull thwack. "I've awakened my psychic power, but it's so weak it's hardly useful." Though Cain was thrilled to have become a psychic user, his disappointment over the frailty of his ability was palpable. Sabrina's power dwarfed his, and even Slowpoke boasted stronger psychic energy. Forget it," Cain sighed. "I'm lucky enough to have awakened my psychic ability. Perhaps I can improve it with training." Psychic users were rare and valuable, capable of contributing greatly to daily life and battles. However, the caveat was that Cain had to hone his ability to make it more potent. Unbeknownst to him, Cain hadn't initially possessed the potential to awaken his psychic energy. However, after living 3 lives, his mental fortitude had strengthened, and he exceeded most people in terms of experience and age. Yet, even with these advantages, it remained immensely difficult to awaken psychic energy. In the end, it was Sabrina's fierce palm strike that brought about Cain's awakening. Though her sole intent was to incapacitate him for a few hours, she focused all her psychic energy on his brain. Inadvertently, she unshackled Cain, thus enabling him to awaken his psychic ability. Despite his excitement over this newfound power, Cain's confrontation with Sabrina had left him feeling powerless once again. He tucked the manual into his belt. Now wasn't the time to pore over it. He had already overstayed his welcome and needed to depart. He returned Slowpoke back to its Pokeball, while Ghastly, weak and sluggish, concealed itself in his shadow. Murkrow eyed him uncertainly before settling onto his shoulder. With a nod of farewell, Cain donned his black cloak and strode away. Chapter 78. Once more venturing into the underbelly of the market, Cain made his way to the Pokémon sales area. There, he stumbled upon a nondescript kiosk where he offloaded the 4 forgotten Pokémon with ease. As he pocketed the 50,000 Pokedollars that jangled in his hand, Cain couldn't help but feel a pang of satisfaction at the small but hard-earned sum. The largest item store in the black market was his next destination. His eyes settled on a ring, seemingly unremarkable in appearance but with a secret capacity of 5 cubic meters. It cost him every Pokedollar he'd just earned, but Cain knew it was a necessary purchase. The Team Rocket belt he'd been given on the trial island was far too conspicuous. With its bold emblem and measly 1 cubic meter capacity, Cain needed a more discreet and spacious storage tool to carry his belongings, and this ring was just the ticket. Although it seemed steep, Cain knew that the Pokémon World's research on spatial storage tools was advanced. The most basic Pokeball, after all, was only 200 Pokedollars. And so, he emptied the contents of the Team Rocket belt into the new ring, secure in the knowledge that this unassuming piece of jewelry would serve as his trusty storage companion. Without pause, he pressed on to the Pokémon food area, not for Pokeblocks, but for something far more vital: the ingredients needed to craft advanced Pokeblocks. These delicacies required more than just your average herbs and berries, and Cain was intent on concocting a bespoke blend for each of his beloved Pokémon. Cain sauntered past the Pokeblock shop, barely glancing at the rainbow display of treats. Even the advanced Pokeblocks failed to catch his eye. The hefty price tags, on the other hand, drew a heavy sigh from his lips. Profitable, no doubt. Though the ability to create advanced Pokeblocks was a lucrative one, Cain kept it close to his chest. The last thing he needed was the attention and danger that came with such power. 500 Pokedollars for a single universal Pokeblock was standard fare, a mere drop in the bucket for those with deep pockets. And for high-level Pokémon with insatiable appetites, tens of thousands of Pokedollars per meal was not uncommon. But alas, Cain's current standing was not yet high enough to indulge in such extravagances. No, for now. He had to be content with the strange and exotic items that caught his eye. He didn't bother with the hot Pokeblocks that others fawned over. He had his sights set on something else entirely. The salesperson, a dubious character with a sneer permanently etched onto his face, looked at Cain like he was a buffoon as he handed over a cool 1 million Pokedollars. But if anyone else had been in the store that day, someone with a trained eye, they would have recognized the significance of what Cain had purchased. For in his possession were powders, brimming with 4 different types of energy, each harvested from the horns, feathers, and scales of quasi-elite level Pokémon, creatures so powerful that even their remains were pricey. These powders were crucial to the creation of a Pokeblock specifically designed for Murkrow and Slowpoke, and Cain was willing to pay any price for these rare and exotic ingredients. Meanwhile, Ghastly's energy requirements were more complex, and it was here that Cain's Pokedollar truly shone. An invaluable piece of black sludge infused with poison and a ghost ribbon with years of history were the crucial ingredients. And for the unborn Skorupi, Cain had taken pains to select materials that matched its attributes, such as the powdery remains of Heracross shell and a poison-type substance similar to Ghastly's. It was with these rare and dear materials that Cain's million Pokedollar spending spree was justified. The value of advanced Pokeblocks that he could create with these materials, when paired with the right berries, would easily surpass 10 times their cost. After securing these items, Cain spent another 100,000 Pokedollars on special berries. When he finally emerged from the shop, only 700,000 Pokedollars remained in his possession. With the shop assistant's aid, he swiftly deposited the sum into his association identity card, discarding the anonymous black bank card with distrust. Though anonymous, the card's affiliation with Team Rocket made it a risky possession, better to be rid of. Training Pokémon was no small feat, as Cain well knew. Even with his expertise, the investment was high. And for those without his knowledge and resources, the cost was astronomical. A fact that made his already expensive undertaking all the more daunting. These Pokeblocks were but a small taste of what was to come, a mere drop in the bucket for the needs of his ever-growing Pokémon family. As their levels rose, so too would the quality of their dietary requirements. With a heavy heart, Cain trudged out of the black market, careful not to draw any undue attention. Despite Slowpoke's teleport being available, Cain was loath to use it within the confines of Saffron City. The trauma of Sabrina's power still lingered, and the last thing he needed was to attract more trouble. Once out of the market shadows, Cain shed his garb and donned the association's uniform, hailing a cab to take him to the Pokémon Center at the city's heart. By the time he arrived, night had blanketed the sky, and the weariness he felt was palpable. Though he initially had ample time, Sabrina's sudden appearance had taken a toll on his mind and body. After flashing his association identity card, he secured a room at the Pokémon Center and ordered a meal for both himself and his companions. Stuffed and sated, Cain collapsed onto the bed, a sense of utter exhaustion washing over him. The headache from awakening his psychic abilities still lingered, and his body ached with fatigue. With a deep breath, Cain let himself sink into the safe embrace of slumber, the Pokémon Center a bastion of comfort and security in a world fraught with danger. Chapter 79. When Cain stirred, the sun was already creeping over the horizon, a gentle beckoning of the new day. His body hummed with the precision of his biological clock, honed sharp by the trials of the island. The headache that had plagued him finally dissipated with a night of deep slumber. As he rose, his Pokémon stirred in turn, Murkrow and the others rousing from their dreams with a flutter and a yawn. A sumptuous breakfast was ordered from the Pokémon Center, the trio gobbling it down with gusto. A plan formed in Cain's mind as his Pokémon engaged in some simple indoor training. First and foremost, making Pokeblocks was a must. The intermediate Pokeblock his Murkrow and Slowpoke relied on was dwindling, and Ghastly had yet to find a suitable blend. 2 days remained until Skorupi's birth, and the little bug would need sustenance. Miltank, too, awaited his attention after its recent acquisition from the black market. Cain's plan solidified. The morning would be spent on making Pokeblocks and subduing Miltank, with indoor training and the remainder of the Pokeblocks to be made in the afternoon. With a determined grin, he set to work, his Pokémon following his lead with eager anticipation. With the dexterity of a master craftsman, Cain laid out an array of berries and special ingredients on the table before him. The set of mid-tier Pokeblock crafting tools, worth a hefty 1.2 million Pokedollars, gleamed in the light as he arranged each piece with care. Each tool had a distinct purpose, and Cain knew them all intimately. Once all was in place, he began production. Mashing, separating, stirring, fusing, and condensing, every step carried out with fluid grace. He couldn't help but smirk at the covetous gazes of his Pokémon as they watched him work. The heady aroma of the advanced Pokeblocks wafted through the air, richer and more tantalizing than the intermediate version. Every Pokeblock was custom-made to suit the unique attributes and growth trajectory of each Pokémon, using the vast calculation capability and database of the AI system. No specific formula was used in the creation of these advanced Pokeblocks, only the AI system's vast stores of information, merged with each Pokémon's unique characteristics. The result was a series of Pokeblocks with unparalleled efficacy, exclusive to Cain's Pokémon. Name: Unknown Pokeblock. Raw ingredients: Dark Energy Powder, Flying Energy Powder, Dark Berry, Citrus Berry. Effect: quickly increases the growth rate of Pokémon. The lower the level of the Pokémon, the better the effect. Note: suitable for Murkrow. Today's production run followed the same pattern, every Pokeblock identical in their AI system data. Cain marveled at the elegant black and white Pokeblock suitable for Murkrow, admired the layer of sparkling membrane on the light blue Pokeblock for Slowpoke, and appreciated the frosted gray of the Pokeblock created for Ghastly. The process was challenging, but with his new tools, Cain worked at a breakneck pace, producing nearly 1,000 Pokeblocks of each type in just 3 hours. It was a feast fit for half a month's consumption for his beloved Pokémon. In his spare time, he scoured the AI system for an intermediate Pokeblock that would suit his newest acquisition, Miltank. The powerful creature was an absolute asset to the team, and Cain was determined to make it feel at home. The Pokeblock would increase the speed of milk production and imbue the milk with an abundance of trace elements. It would also boost the Miltank's physical prowess. Advanced Pokeblocks remained out of reach, for the ingredients eluded him. Nonetheless, Cain treated each Pokémon with equal care and attention, demanding only their wholehearted loyalty in return. With the Pokeblocks prepared, he turned his attention to the Miltank he had procured. Cain walked over to a training ground he had rented at the corner of the Pokémon Center. With practiced ease, he released the Pokémon from its Pokeball, watching as it materialized in a flash of red light. The creature was a formidable sight, bursting with energy. 2 powerful eyes glared at him, unyielding in their hostility. But Cain was undaunted. He met the Miltank's gaze with calm certainty, unafraid to assert his dominance. "Miltank, I know you don't trust humans," he said, his voice firm and clear. "But you're no match for me." Cain knew wild Pokémon were creatures of strength and independence. They respected those who proved their worth, and Cain was determined to earn the Miltank's respect. He could see the hesitation in the creature's eyes as it regarded him and the Slowpoke by his side. Slowpoke, having gone without a proper battle since leaving the trial island, was eager for a fight. But the Miltank shook its head slowly, for it was not a creature that fought head-on. Its moves were honed from a distaste for battle, not a love for it. Chapter 80. Cain furrowed his brow, not quite comprehending what the bovine behemoth was getting at. Did she really think they were in the dark about who the victor would be before they even battled? Yadong! A blue light flickered in Slowpoke's eyes, as the creature tapped into the Miltank's consciousness with its telepathy. The two Pokémon began to communicate, their minds merging in a flurry of thoughts and sensations. Cain watched silently, trusting in Slowpoke's intuition. He knew the creature wouldn't waste his time on something trivial. The telepathic link between the two Pokémon was profound, and they soon ceased their chattering. The effect was palpable. Though Cain didn't know what Slowpoke had said to the Miltank, he could see the wary look in her eyes dissipate. Her gaze fell on Cain, a newfound calmness in her gaze. Master, her story is like mine. She was separated from her herd when she was young and seeks their reunion. If you can help her find them, she'll willingly submit to your command. Slowpoke's voice resonated in Cain's mind, as he grew more proficient with his telepathy. In reality, the two creatures had spoken of much more than that. They had shared their experiences, with Slowpoke revealing his innermost thoughts about Cain. In the end, he had convinced the Miltank to put her trust in the human. The Miltank's own struggles had made her more open to Slowpoke's guidance, and she had ultimately made the choice to reach out to Cain. Of course, the fact that Slowpoke was stronger than her was another major factor in her decision. A human who could tame the seemingly indolent Slowpoke, who was stronger than her, and whom Slowpoke trusted so implicitly, it was clear that Miltank wouldn't be averse to being tamed either. Slowpoke's words left Cain dumbfounded. He knew that things weren't as easy as the Pokémon made them out to be, but the fact that he had managed to persuade Miltank in his own way was nothing short of remarkable. A small smile crept across Cain's lips as he walked towards Miltank. He gently placed his hand on her head, causing her to look at him with a hint of awkwardness. From now on, please take care of me, Miltank, Cain beamed with genuine warmth. He hadn't anticipated the process to be so seamless. Cain had expected to have to fight tooth and nail and use some underhanded tactics to convince her. Milu. As Cain's hand drew nearer, Miltank's body tensed up, freezing in place as his hand made contact with her head. Feeling the warmth and the trust of his caressing hands, she couldn't help but feel a wave of comfort. It was the first time she had felt this way since being separated from her herd. 4 years, she had lived a solitary existence. Hunting for food and finding shelter had all been a solitary affair. It was no wonder that she had become so introverted. Surviving in the wild was unforgiving. What's more, she had never been a fan of combat, making things even harder for her. All the support moves she had learned had been taught to her by other kind-hearted Pokémon in the wild, allowing her to heal her wounds and endure the harshness of the wild. When she was captured by the hunters, she didn't resist. In fact, she was the calmest of all the Miltanks in the room. She had always regarded humans as just another type of Pokémon and had grown accustomed to losing battles. That was until Slowpoke, a Pokémon with experiences similar to hers, used his unique method to teach her about the connection between humans and Pokémon, and the importance of that bond. It was in that moment that she began to reconsider her stance. Humans and Pokémon, the two species coexisting in an enigmatic world. As Miltank looked at Cain, she saw a smile that exuded warmth and understanding. He patted her head again and withdrew an intermediate Pokeblock that had been prepared specifically for her. Miltank, would you like to try this? Cain held out the treat, a heady fragrance wafting from it, making her mouth water. Miltank hesitated, but the affirmation in Cain's eyes gave her the courage to take a bite of the unfamiliar food. Yadong, Slowpoke's cry echoed in the background, offering further reassurance. As the Pokeblock made contact with her taste buds, her eyes widened with delight. She savored the flavors, her pink cheeks flushed with pleasure. Under the watchful gaze of Cain and Slowpoke, the once shy Miltank had been won over by the delicious treat. Cain's tone grew more serious as he spoke. Miltank, I promise to help you find your herd. But if you choose to become my Pokémon, you must obey my orders. If you refuse to listen and interfere with battles, I will not hesitate to take action. Although he trusted his Pokémon, there were certain rules that must be followed, and Cain wasn't afraid to enforce them. I understand that you may not like to fight, but training is necessary to survive and protect your comrades. I ask only that you try your best and take care of your companions, Cain continued, his words carrying weight and gravity. Miltank looked at Cain, her expression pensive. She knew the gravity of his words and nodded her head resolutely, agreeing to abide by his rules. The Miltank's aptitude and potential were nothing to scoff at. Even though Cain had only enlisted her as a support, she was still an invaluable asset with life-saving capabilities. Let's go. It's time to grab some lunch and meet your new companions, Cain exclaimed, relieved to have secured Miltank's consent. As they arrived back at Cain's room, Cain let Murkrow and Ghastly out to meet their new teammate. Ghastly was over the moon, having always been the youngest member of the team. He circled around Miltank, his happiness on full display. The normally shy Miltank was feeling a bit self-conscious under the sudden attention, but Murkrow flew to her side and patted her shoulder with his wings. He let her know that he was there for her and that she could rely on him if she needed anything. As the team's big brother, Murkrow was determined to protect Miltank, especially since she was the only girl on the team. The others worked just as hard, making sure that no harm would come to her on their watch. Despite feeling a bit bashful, Miltank was quick to impress her new companions with her delicious milk. It was high in nutrients and rich in flavor, and before she knew it, all the Pokémon had fallen under her spell. After a grueling morning of training, the milk had been a godsend, rejuvenating their exhausted bodies and rekindling their energy. They couldn't get enough of the delicious drink.